We're ready to begin. Jane, would you please call the roll?
Regent Drew. Regent Evers. Regent Falbo. Regent Higgins. Regent Manydeeds. Regent Pointer. Regent Pruitt. Regent Roberts. Regent Shervin. Regent Smith. Regent Spector. Regent Tyler. Regent Vasquez. Regent Walsh. Regent Whitburn. A quorum is present.
Thank you. I'd like to start out this morning by saying thank you to whomever managed to schedule the Regents meeting in conjunction with the inauguration of Dr. Wachter. It was a great event. Congratulations again. And it was a real honor for us to be there and to help you into office formally. Since our last meeting, Governor Walker appointed John Bailing of Eau Claire and Regina Milner of Madison to full 7-year Regent terms. Both of them were unanimously confirmed by the Senate, and John and Regina will officially take their seats at the June board meeting in Milwaukee. However, Regina decided to get a sneak peek, and she is with us today. So would you stand up, Regina, and on behalf of the board, welcome. I told Regina I was sure she was replacing me, and she said, no, it was Judy Crane. So that's an honor for you, Judy. Good. We learned earlier this week also that the governor has also appointed a new student regent, Tracy Rybar. Tracy is a UW Parkside student and the business manager at James Rybar Trucking in Franksville, Wisconsin, which is in Racine County. She will succeed Troy as our non-traditional student regent. Next order of business is approval of the minutes of the February 10, 2012 meetings. They were sent on by Jane. Would anybody care to make a motion regarding their approval? Jeff, is there a second? Any discussion? Anybody wants any additions or corrections of which we should be aware? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Our first order of business is one that was added earlier this week at the request of our featured speaker, who is Allie Gardner. Allie, who is the chair of the Associate Students of Madison, and some of her, or at least one of her student leader colleagues are here to speak about shared governance and perhaps a few other things. Allie requested the opportunity to speak with us, and Kevin and I decided, and Brent decided, that that would be appropriate. So welcome, Allie. One thing I have concluded after my years on this board is that it is relatively easy to reach agreement in the abstract about shared governance principles, but it is much more difficult to apply those principles in real time. So we'll be interested to hear what you have to say, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. As President Spector said, my name is Allie Gardner. I am a junior at UW-Madison, and I'm also the chair of the Associated Students of Madison, which is our governance group at our campus.
And my name is Dylan Jambrick. I'm a student at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and I'm also the vice president and chair of the board of directors for United Council of UW Students, which is the statewide student association.
So we wanted to start out with just saying thank you, first of all, to President Spector for being so receptive to our request. Myself, the Student Governance Council president at UW Colleges, the UW-Milwaukee president, and then the leadership of United Council all sent out a request on Monday, and we pretty much got a response a couple hours later basically saying, yes, please come. So we're very thankful that President Spector and the rest of you are eager to have this conversation, and we think it's really important. So we wanted to say thank you and also welcome our new chancellor. That's really exciting as well for Superior.
We have many topics that we're going to cover. Primarily, the theme of our presentation is how to better relationship between the student body in UW system and its Board of Regents in UW system. Across the country, we've seen this relationship break down quite a bit to the point of even violence at Regents and trustees meetings. And not only, I'm sure, is that something you would like to avoid, it's certainly something that we as student leaders would certainly like to avoid.
And as Dylan has obviously brought up, some of the premise of this is what's going on. And so as Dylan mentioned, some of the premise of this discussion is the fact that the student-regent or student-trustee relationship has really come into the national spotlight. We've seen incidents at Georgia, incidents at Illinois and New Jersey, and then most recently in California at Santa Monica College, where there's been mounting tension between students and their regents or their trustees. And luckily in Wisconsin, we have regents that are receptive, and we want to make sure that we're putting mechanisms in place that can help us avoid some of those incidences and some of those reactions that we've seen elsewhere. And so we feel like we have some recommendations that we can provide. And there's also been a lot of connections here in Wisconsin in issues that have come up and issues that students have had that they're having in other states too.
And if you're unfamiliar with the incident at Santa Monica College, students wanted to go to their Board of Trustees meeting and use the public comment section. And then more students than could fit in the room showed up to speak in the public comment section. And so there was some resistance from security, and ultimately many students were pepper sprayed, and the meeting was essentially called off because of kind of the chaos that ensued thereafter. And it was, the public comment section was primarily around a differential tuition proposal relating to the cost of classes that they were going to provide new, but that they would cost more money. And so that was that incident. And we're particularly concerned because we see a lot of the same issues that are in those states here in Wisconsin that are being presented, and yet we haven't seen those incidents. But we shouldn't necessarily think that we're somehow special and that we necessarily will not see a boiling over of tensions. We've obviously seen tuition increases, although much more moderate than we've seen, for instance, in California and some of those other states. The state is discussing how to restructure the UW system, potentially discussing tuition control and where that would be set. There is, of course, the controversial New Badger Partnership proposal that was presented last spring. And so we've seen a lot of the similar things that are being proposed in these other states that have resulted in some more tension between regents and students. And so we most certainly don't want to think that we're somehow special. We want to take proactive steps to ensure that our relationship stays strong. In talking to the students that Allie mentioned and a lot of other students, we've seen a lot of concern that while we can speak to you all and our administration in somewhat limited settings, that a lot of times those concerns are not heard, or and that's just, I think, more of a perception. Obviously, students and regents and students administrators are not always going to agree, but there is a perception out there that the concerns are not heard. And while we do have a proud tradition of shared governance in our state law, that actually applies to our institutions and our campuses, and there isn't necessarily shared governance here at the board level, except for the fact that we have two student regents, which are also selected by the governor. It's a little bit ironic because students have been working on a particular issue all year, but they aren't allowed to speak about it, and yet this presentation is allowed. So I thought that was somewhat relevant. I'm not going to bring up the issue as I'm told I'm not supposed to, but I think it is somewhat interesting that that request was denied. Additionally, I would say that students were here for the Board of Regents and system in a very real way last spring. Students showed an unprecedented amount of activism and involvement in protecting a unified UW system and fighting the the $250 million cut that the governor proposed, and a host of other issues that students were highly activated about. And so I think students have been there for UW system in a real way in the past year especially, and across time. And so we're hoping that that advocacy will also go in the opposite direction. And so a general theme here is that in addition to regents and system admin being advocates for us, we also need you to let us be advocates for ourselves. Frequently, when students are, you want a student input or you want what students think, chief student affairs officers or chancellors are asked to say, well, what do students at your institution think? Not students at that institution, what do you think? And part of that is some of the proposals we'll get to a little bit later. But the general theme is to let students advocate for students.
And I think what Dylan mentioned about perception is really important because we know, or at least Dylan and I know, that we can send emails to some of you, whereas other students may not have that outlet. Most other students don't have that outlet, and most of them aren't familiar with most of you. So I think perception is really important in terms of what frustrations are happening with students, what their concerns and needs are, and when those frustrations boil over, what can happen, especially when they feel like they don't have mechanisms to advocate for themselves, when they don't feel like their voices are being heard. It's very much based on perception and the connection like they feel that they have to you, or the avenues for communication they feel like they have. And so I think if we can establish some of those additional mechanisms, those frustrations won't boil over as much as they could. And I think the whole premise of that is just to avoid those incidents that have been happening in California and other places, but also to avoid the reactions that we've seen. It's not just so much that students are frustrated and then these incidents happen, but also there's a bizarre reaction to those incidences when students do begin to advocate for themselves. And so Dylan and I have communicated with a few other campuses, a lot of the UW colleges, UW-Milwaukee, UW-Parkside, Oshkosh, and a few others earlier this week, Eau Claire as well, and then Madison. And we've come up with some concrete recommendations that we feel like could be implemented. The main idea, which is something that Dylan already touched on, is that students are the only ones that can speak for students. We very much understand the need for communication and the relationship between institutional administrators, who oftentimes make decisions in the view that they see as best for students, but again, they can't really advocate in the same way that we can advocate for ourselves. So all of these recommendations fall under the idea that students are the only ones that really can speak for students here, and so we'd really appreciate and value additional lines of communication to you all. The first one, which is something that students have kind of unanimously brought up even before I kind of said what we were thinking of, was asking that each regent come to one United Council event per year. It's just a really good way for you all to be able to interface with students, and I think that it's really it's timed right because it's also the same time as student reps is during the United Council conventions. So not only would you be able to meet with leadership of all the UW schools, but also you'd be able to see the other people that are involved in student government and are advocating for student concerns and needs that you all are making decisions about. So I think that would be something really easy to do, considering that they're put in different places across the state, and that student leadership or student governance leadership is there at the same time that others that are involved in student government are available as well to talk with you all.
And I especially wanted to thank Regent Falbo, who did show up to a student representatives meeting at UW Parkside. I grilled him a little bit, and so I'll apologize a little bit for that. But the part of the reason why I asked him question upon question upon question, this was fresh after a restructuring task force meeting, or the Falbo committee, if that's what we're calling it. But there's part of the reason why students, when you do actually meet students, they kind of grill you a little bit, is because the points of interaction are so few or so rare that they have to kind of cram all their questions and all their feedback into a very one concentrated space. And so that's part of why I think Allie brought up the idea of Regents and system folks coming to our events one a year, because we have 4 conventions a year in addition to our Building Unity, Inclusivity, and Empowerment Conference, which was in Milwaukee this year, as well as our statewide lobby day, which was in Madison, which the system cabinet met, and we were very appreciative of that. The next proposal is one specifically for the Board of Regents, and that is considering an open forum or public comment section at your meetings. I know recently you also restructured the Board of Regents meetings, and you're considering institutional non-governance boards, but it's a principle of a lot of institutions that have governing authorities, such as you. Even city councils and student governments and our state government all have public comment or open forum sections at some point during their meetings, but the Board of Regents does not. And it can be somewhat prohibitive for students to even try to request to do a presentation such as this, because it is a rarity and it is more difficult compared to offering simply, say, 20 minutes potentially of open forum, say on the Friday all Regents session of your regular meetings. I think could be a real way in which students could voice concerns to the Regents. I don't think Regents need to be shielded from public comment that needs to be somehow vetted in a back room before it's brought into this space, and therefore students and also faculty and academic staff who don't have speaking rights necessarily at this body could at some point convey their concerns, since that is a principle of various governing authorities within our state and our country and our world to have an open forum or public comment section.
Another proposal that we have that is reflective of shared governance kind of as a tradition here is more transparency and information sharing in the form of sending out the agendas to students at the same time that the regents get them. I think this is really important because sometimes we're sent them in the same week, and we do want to know what's going on. We want to make sure that we're well informed so that we're not making assumptions about decisions that are being made or aren't being made, and I think that it would be helpful to us if we could see all the items and materials that are going to be on the agenda at the same time that you all do, so that we can set up lines of communication, whether it be similar to the conference calls that we have with the student regents. It would be helpful in those conference calls if we knew more ahead of time what's going to be talked about, as I'm sure it would for you as well. And so I think as a whole it would be much easier for us to understand what's happening and know what we want to communicate about if we're provided with the materials and the agenda at the same time. And so that's another proposal that students have kind of collaboratively decided would be really helpful and something that's very easy to do.
And I would say the major last one, before Student Representatives was formed in 2005, it was Student Ambassadors, and before that it didn't really have a precursor. And so while Student Representatives is a new group in terms of the time of system or institutions, Student Representatives does represent the elected leadership of all UW institutions, and yet it's not always given the same policy review that, say, chancellors, CBOs, provosts, CSAOs are given. And recently we saw a policy that was reviewed that almost exclusively pertains to students, and that was 30-4. And yet student representatives, while it was talked about at their meetings, wasn't given a formal consultation. And in fact, that student proposal was almost held up because provosts didn't have a chance to look at the policy. And so provosts, academic officers, were given consultation over a student policy, but students weren't asked directly, what do you think? And while they did actually endorse 30-4 at a meeting, and of course there were students on the committee, there were also provosts on the committee and CBOs on the committee and a chancellor on the committee, Chancellor Wells. And so it was interesting that even on a student policy that students weren't considered one of the formal consultation groups that had to go through one of the hurdles. And it's not just on 30-4, it's on a lot of policies. I think that it would be pertinent to have them get together on a conference call, or if it coincides with one of their quarterly meetings, to present policy changes to them as one of the formal policy review groups that are currently asked through system.
And then just kind of to conclude, I think that there's always going to be disagreements between students and regents. I don't think that these are the solutions to the disagreements that we're going to have by any means. I think there are additional mechanisms that are necessary in order for students who are becoming increasingly engaged to be able to communicate with you all. So I'm not saying at all that disagreements are now going to be eliminated. I don't mean to give that false assumption, but I think it's very clear that across the country and also in Wisconsin, students are more engaged in what's going on in this room than they ever have been. It's not very typical that even at the beginning of the year I heard students talking about what was happening at Regent meetings, but more lately, and not even just on my campus specifically, students are talking about those things, even if it doesn't seem like it, because they don't know the ways in which they can communicate with you all. So I think for us to be able to come together and find ways that we can add on to the ways they can communicate that engagement to you would be an extremely positive thing. And I know sometimes that can be really difficult in those disagreements, especially when disagreements are communicated, it can cause tension. But I think that engagement that students have with what's going on in this room is really important, and we need to facilitate and cultivate that, because even if the conversations are challenging, we're going to get the best outcomes and best practices from more engagement from students and from our other shared governance groups as well. So I don't mean to say that things are going to get easier because we add additional forms of communication. I don't think that's true. But adding that engagement is really important, I think, for us to be able to find resolutions that we feel like, or that students feel like they're being involved in, or at least are able to voice their concerns through.
And so that concludes our presentation. So we'd like to give you our thanks for having this opportunity, and would love to answer any questions or have any comments from the Regents.
Let me first of all say thank you very much for adhering exactly to the 20 minutes that I asked you to do. First-rate job. I'd like to add that I know that it will not wholly answer at all what you're saying, but I do want to point out that Troy and Katie's presence in this instance and others who follow them is a significant thing for us. They do comment on things. They do represent, I think, student interest in a very successful way. I know that isn't going to satisfy everything you've asked for, and I think you've asked for it in a very excellent way. I would point out that the agendas issue should not be a problem at all. Agendas are public documents. We send them, don't we? I think
Student reps receive the agendas.
we can
at the
certainly
same
give,
time the
that's
regents do.
easy. Just get your name on Jane's list and you'll get them the same time everybody else gets them. They're public records at that point. So that should be. On the others, I would suggest that that the board, and it won't be me now, but the board take your comments under advisement, think about them, get back to you in a reasonable way as we go forward. I do think, though, that we could take 10 more minutes, and I'd like to limit it to that if anybody has any questions or comments. As long as you've come all this way, I think we should let people ask you things, or grill you if they want to.
Regent Falvo, now's your chance.
Anybody? Mike?
I wanted to say that Dylan's grilling, and Alley too for that matter, was not limited to that one day in Parkside.
Well, we met with them, you and I and Jeff met in Madison one day with Allie, with you, and others beyond the students. That's right. Mike, anything else? Or you?
I may, but not at the
Okay.
moment.
Anybody else want to comment or question? Troy.
This is one area that I've struggled with as a student regent is making that connection, and as a non-traditional student especially, I haven't been able to attend all of the student rep meetings, and I quickly realized that it was going to be more of a challenge hearing from you guys. So it was at that point that Katie and I organized the conference call. We do just for other regents, Katie and I do a conference call prior to regent meetings to hear student concerns. And we send out an invite through the student reps email list, and Allie, you've been very involved with that, and I appreciate that. But it's just there's no interest there. So the last two, in fact, I've canceled because nobody's interested. How can we improve that conference call? And is that a effective way for you guys to try to get your voices heard?
I can answer that since I've been participating in them. I think it's been helpful for me because I've been looking through the agenda, but sometimes students aren't familiar with everything that's on it until after things happen. So sometimes it's the fact that students are engaged after decisions happen. So I think what Dylan and I are more talking about is trying to establish mechanisms where we have direct lines of communication rather than going through one or two people that can definitely advocate for us, and I think you both have. You've absolutely brought up concerns that I've had, but I think we're looking for ways that students can come to the full board and be able to communicate concerns in a direct manner. I do think that the conference calls are really helpful. I think one way to maybe improve them could be by direct communication with the leadership at those institutions, whether it's through a phone call to them or when you're on their campus meeting with them, I think is helpful, but I think they're looking, or we're looking for more direct ways that we can talk to the full board, because we can't always, talk to one or two people and then make sure we're either watching Wisconsin Eye or at the meetings ourselves when they're across the state. But when we do want to be here to talk to all of you or have mechanisms to talk to everyone on a specific topic, I think that's really one way that's going to make the engagement more impactful, though I think that the conference calls could be helpful too for us to utilize like United Council and those student rep meetings to have people talk about them and what's happening at them. But honestly, I think it's more about if you, and since you've been able to come to student reps meetings, I think that's been helpful, but to have people that know why students are feeling the way that they're feeling from their own voice, I think is helpful in being present with them face to face.
Anybody else? Jeff.
I want to compliment you on your presentation. It was a wonderful presentation, very clear, very organized, very effective. Let me offer a couple of suggestions. One is for us to attend United Council events, we need to be invited. Mm-hmm. You have our email addresses, every one of us, I think. Send us an email. We're going to be meeting in Milwaukee. We're going to be meeting in Eau Claire on such and such day. We would love to have you come. That's what it would take, I think, to get regents to come to those events or any other events that you think that we would benefit from. And by the same token, you have our email address. If you want to communicate with us individually, I do get emails from students. From many people, I get emails. And some of them I respond to. I mean, when I get 25 emails saying the same thing, I don't respond to all of those. But if you have a point to make, you think that I should know about it, or any of us should know about it, send an email. I sometimes even get telephone calls. I'm happy to communicate with students or anybody else regarding the function of the Board of Regents and my participation in it. The agenda issue, we certainly can deal with. See, we don't get the agenda until very late, too, so we don't know what's coming up until often the last minute. And it's a lot of stuff that the system staff has to put together for us, so we understand that. You have to understand that, too. But there's no reason why you shouldn't get it at the same time we do. And then as far as open forums at meetings like this is something I think we need to consider. We have a packed agenda. We take a lot of time. We're all volunteers here. We take a lot of time to address the issues that are brought before the Board of Regents. I don't know how much more time we can devote to it, but certainly student participation, direct participation, is something we have to give some thought to. And finally, student participation or input on new policies and rules, that's clearly something that we need to focus on, make sure that when a policy affects students, they have a direct word in what we do with it. So again, compliments to you, and appreciate your addressing this.
Anybody else? Mark.
I'm not saying that these groups are the same to us in our relationship as students are, but we do have multiple constituencies. So what advice would you give if we were faced with an open forum request from unionized faculty, an open forum request from non-unionized faculty, open forum request from classified staff, non-classified staff?
Obviously, you have a lot of constituencies, and I wasn't suggesting the open forum would just be necessarily for students, but a general open forum, and of course limited to a certain time. And you could potentially adopt a rule in which you vary it based on classification, and then you can leave public members at the bottom if there's time left for them, and try to vary it up between students and classified staff and faculty and academic staff, because of course all of them do want to access you and do want to frequently speak to all of you if there's an issue that pertains to them as an individual. I mean, democratic involvement from that many groups is, I guess, a good problem to have, in that they really are engaged and want to speak to you directly. But yeah, my recommendation would be that you just have a general open forum and then find a way to divide it out. Or you can do the first come, first serve and put a list out, and whoever you get through, and if you're not on the list, I'm sorry, or you can vote to extend it, as is kind of the norm for open forum in a lot of places.
So like at the end of 20 minutes, there's a hook?
Well, there's a gavel, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, more likely we'll put a red light there that flashes. Anybody else? Two more, let's say. Mike.
I've had the fortune and pleasure to deal with you guys quite a bit, and I appreciate that. And it's been both on a formal basis like Parkside, and it's been on an informal basis with both of you and others after meetings. Or I just as an aside, I think that the times recently that we've stayed at Union South have promoted that kind of interchange that is not so formal. The one thing I'd suggest, because I don't think there's a regent in here that would say no to you on a get-together, if they can. I mean, obviously, none of us can all the time, but I don't think there's anybody that would turn you down. And so one of the things I would suggest is that your communications be more regular also. That it shouldn't be just when you have an issue. It should be when you don't have an issue to say, hey, thanks for this, or this is coming up later, or here's what our organization has successfully done. We wanted you to be aware of it. And again, I feel fortunate that I get that, because I've been able to talk to you on a fairly regular basis, formally and informally. But I think that's got to be both ways. And I'm not trying to grill you.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think we've been trying to facilitate or encourage students to set up meetings with you all, but sometimes there's definite intimidation and they don't know a lot of you. Dylan and I are lucky in that we get to come to a lot of these meetings, and we have had informal conversations with some of you, but a lot of students don't have that opportunity. And I think that what we're really asking for is not just that students feel more comfortable to set up meetings with you or to communicate with you over email or over phone, but that if you're interested in what students' interests are, we're also asking that you set up meetings with them, or that there be a point person for the Regents or from system that facilitates actual meetings or communication through email or something like that, to have someone who's going to do that, because we understand that you all are busy and that we're busy too, and that sometimes that can inhibit that from happening. But what we're asking is that you go out of your way also to try to communicate with us, and not just that we come to you with concerns, because we don't want that kind of relationship where the only time we're talking to you is when we have an issue, because that's not fun for anyone. But I definitely agree with you. It has to go both ways, and maybe having a point person to set up meetings when you're on our campuses with students, or to have those set up email communication or whatever. Any of those things I think could also be really helpful.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and if I could add, in terms of collecting information or public comment, it's important, especially with students, to go where they live, and they live on the internet. And if there were agenda items to be, listed with a comment box, if anyone's ever read, a comment box in, say, a newspaper, and those get obnoxious. But if there are, thoughtful student leaders that are leaving those comments, and you can walk away with at least, kind of, oh, that's kind of the general consensus. Maybe that's a tool we could use to collect some input, because obviously, even if we were to get a public comment or open forum, it would be time limited. And on a contentious issue, say a tuition increase, if that were to happen in June, there probably would be a long line of people who would like to speak that ultimately would be prevented from speaking, because you do have to have a meeting at some point. But collecting it in some kind of electronic digest might be a little bit more manageable from that perspective, in addition to having a more limited public forum.
Well, this board is now at the forefront of the digital revolution, as you'll learn later today. Katie, I'm going to give you a comment, and then Kevin wants the last word here.
Well, first I want to thank you guys both for coming. I know it was a long trip. A lot of us made it as well. And I speak for all the Regents, I think, when I say we appreciate you guys coming and kind of voicing your concerns. I guess what I would say is, to make sure you know, and I think you do, that I am always a tool here for you guys to, if you need to speak to me or Troy, and I know the new non-traditional will feel the same way. And I think we need to be utilized more. If you talk about a point person to facilitate meetings, I know I've helped facilitate meetings with system people or just other students as well. I think we need to be utilized to a greater extent, and that might remedy some of the problems you guys have. But in terms of, I guess, talking to the full board, I think some of the things you brought up could, I guess, very well happen. We'll talk about it and see kind of what the feelings are. But in terms of an individual basis, I also agree with Regent Falbo in saying I don't think anyone would turn you down if you do want to meet, if you do have concerns, if you do have questions. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that, and I want to thank you again for coming.
Thanks to Allie and to Dylan for their thoughtful, I thought very constructive presentation and set of recommendations, and for making the trip to be here with us today. And I'll come back to their recommendations in a minute. But I think, Allie and Dylan, you know that my door is always open to students, student leaders, and when I get a call from one of you or any other student leader, it gets returned either the same day or the same night or the same weekend. And I think we want to keep those kinds of channels open going for the future, because there are big issues out there, and there will be tensions given the conditions in which we find ourselves, and we need to know each other as people a little bit better, I think, and that always makes it a more constructive dialogue around the tough issues when we do that. So finding more opportunities along the lines you suggest to do that is a wise thing, I think. And let me add one, if I may, and you can see if you like it. In years past, we had a system where I would regularly sit down every month or every other month with United Council leadership just to talk about what was going on. Sometimes we had a formal agenda, sometimes we didn't. So I'd certainly make that offer to the United Council leadership now, with one condition, and that is, it's National Poetry Month. And I discovered about a month ago that Dylan Jambek's middle name is Thomas. Dylan Thomas Jambek. So the condition is that at the first meeting with the new leadership, he come prepared to recite before the meeting starts a Dylan Thomas poem from memory with no notes. And then we'll begin the meeting.
Doesn't have to be in Welsh, though.
Not in Welsh, no.
Having once been for about 6 years involved in forensics or competitive speech, I think I can oblige you with a reading from Dylan Thomas.
We look forward to it.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, we will... Kevin, back to you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, all. Been a busy time at our state's capital in recent months. Late last month, the legislature did conclude its 2011-12 general session, and down the stretch of that session, several bills were passed by the legislature and have been reviewed now and signed by the governor that are of note to us. Senate Bill 461 relates to the Read to Lead initiative, which contains provisions on teacher preparation and helps to create more of a one-stop shop for information about our UW institutions. Testimony in that case from our UW education deans, I think, really helped to shape many of the provisions of that bill in a positive way. I'd mention particularly UW Whitewater's Education Dean Katie Haining and UW-Madison's Dean Julie Underwood and Associate Dean at Madison Cheryl Hanley Maxwell. So thanks to them for their work with us on that bill. Another one, Assembly Bill 144, creates a commission on financial aid. Now this is really a continuation of a Ledge Council committee where legislators and a number of UW colleagues, at least 5 of our UW financial aid officers, work to understand the complexities of financial aid and to make it work as smoothly as it can in the interests of our students. So that's clearly a very important and timely topic. We've talked about it at this board in recent months, and we welcome any efforts to make the process work better in cooperation with the legislature and the governor. Assembly Bill 322 relates to making instructional materials more readily and more quickly available for students with disabilities. This is something we've been working on for years, and this is, we think, a very positive development and should be a tangible improvement for students. In other news from the Capitol, on March 16th, Senator Pam Galloway of Wausau announced her resignation. An immediate result of that decision is that the Senate is now split with equal numbers of Democrat and Republican members. And other changes are also forthcoming. As of this week, 11 members of the Assembly and 2 senators have announced they will not be seeking re-election. So all in all, it should mean continuing interesting times as we relate to our state government. On the federal front, board members recently received our latest UW Federal Priorities binder. This compilation of campus priority is an important communications tool that helps us raise our UW system's visibility and is also a means to articulate our goals and our strengths and priorities with our federal government, both as individual institutions and as an integrated system of higher education. We find when we talk to our elected officials at the federal level and their staffs down in Washington that they like this reference guide very much because it makes their job easier. It makes it easier for them to understand what we are asking for, why, how the money would be used, etc. So that binder has a wealth of information in it. I'd urge you all to take a look at it if you haven't. And thanks, as always, to Assistant Vice President for Federal Relations, Chris Andrews, for pulling that together. Some other news. We often talk, and we talk more and more about it. We talked a little bit about it yesterday in our discussion of how we'd shape up the budget, about being responsive to the workforce needs of the state. A new online program being offered by a consortium of 4 UW campuses and coordinated by UW Extension, I think, is a great example of doing that. Starting this fall, the new online Bachelor of Science in Health Information Management and Technology will provide students with the opportunity to earn a degree in one of the fastest growing professions, health information. Students can receive their degrees through UW Green Bay, UW Parkside, and UW Stevens Point. UW La Crosse is also involved. La Crosse will contribute courses to that joint degree program. According to Dan McCarty, the academic director of the program at UW Stevens Point, This collaboration recognizes and responds to the state's need to grow a pool of IT professionals in the health area. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment of medical records and health information technicians is expected to increase 20% by 2018, much faster than the overall average, so this is really a timely addition to our program array. The Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery, a building we know, the innovative 330,000 square foot public-private facility that opened a year ago on the Madison campus, has been named the 2012 Laboratory of the Year. The international competition, sponsored annually by R&D Magazine since 1966, is judged by a panel of industry experts to recognize the highest standards in architecture, in laboratory design, and in push-the-envelope concepts in science buildings. This unique facility, which houses the Twin Research Institutes, the private nonprofit Morgridge Institute for Research, and UW-Madison's public Wisconsin Institute for Discovery, features architecture that's designed to encourage human interaction and foster new interdisciplinary collaboration. So we're proud of that recognition, and congratulations to Chancellor Ward and the rest of the UW-Madison community. For the fifth time since 2006, UW-Eau Claire has been recognized for its outstanding community service programs by a federal agency charged with fostering an ethic of volunteerism and service in America. UW-Eau Claire was among about 500 public and private colleges, universities, and professional schools named to the 2012 President's Higher Education Community Service Honor Roll by the Corporation for National and Community Service. Launched in 2006, this honor roll is the most prestigious federal recognition a higher education institution can achieve for its commitment to service learning and civic engagement. So we're very proud of that. To Chancellor Levin Stankiewicz, who's not here today but was yesterday, and Pat Klein and others at Eau Claire, we send our congratulations. UW Stout is reporting an unexpected benefit of some long time ago carpooling. Two UW Stout alumni recently contributed more than $1 million in scholarship funds to the institution that they say launched them into a successful business and brought them together as a couple. Brian Jennerjohn, a 1964 graduate, and his wife, the former Ruth Hopfensberger, first connected while sharing rides back and forth between the university and their hometowns in the Fox Valley. Explaining why they were interested in making the donation, Brian credits the very practical education he received at UW Stout. Quote, "Everything I was taught I would put to use in my career," he said. Brian went on to launch his own business, the Jennerjohn Machine Company in Matthews, Indiana. The company, which began as a two-person operation with Brian designing and building the machines and Ruth acting as bookkeeper and, she said, a gopher for parts, now produces machines that are used in countries around the world, including China, the United Arab Emirates, and South Africa. So congratulations to Chancellor Sorensen and Provost First Bow, who's here, and the Stout community on that. New statistics from the U.S. National Science Foundation that you might have seen show that UW-Madison continues to be among the nation's most successful institutions at securing research support. Research expenditures at UW-Madison for fiscal year 2010 topped out at slightly more than $1 billion, an increase of about $15 million from the previous year. That ranks UW-Madison now third among all U.S. universities, trailing only Johns Hopkins and the University of Michigan. And this is no flash-in-the-pan effect, as many of us know. UW-Madison has consistently ranked in the top 5 universities reporting research expenditures since the National Science Foundation started collecting statistics more than 20 years ago. Martin Cadwallader, who's the Vice Chancellor for Research and the Graduate School at Madison, said, "We still see growth, which is a big positive in an environment that continues to be extremely competitive." UW-La Crosse reports that its new academic building, Centennial Hall, has been selected by the Wisconsin State Department of Facilities as its best project of 2011. Governor Scott Walker recently recognized the building's architect, River Architects, with the award at the State Building Commission. The honor salutes the firm for its outstanding work as part of the design team for the $40 million project. Centennial Hall, which opened in August 2011, is the university's largest academic building. It's expected to receive at least a silver rating for leadership in energy and environmental design. That's the LEED or LEED designation, which recognizes features to save annual operating costs and to conserve energy. The hall is the first built predominantly with state funding on that campus, UW-La Crosse, since 1974. Acknowledging the award, Chancellor Joe Gao said, "This award helps to solidify the building as the heart and soul of our academic programs during the university's second century." So congratulations to Joe and his community there. As part of our ongoing efforts to encourage increased student interest in the sciences, UW River Falls recently hosted about 600 high school students from Wisconsin and Minnesota at the UW River Falls Border Battles Science Olympiad Open Invitational Tournament. This event, organized by physics professor Earl Blodgett at UW River Falls, featured 39 high school teams competing in 23 National Science Olympiad events. Unlike many other competitions, the International Nonprofit Science Olympiad mixes the various science disciplines of biology, earth science, chemistry, physics, and technology together in one competition. Now in its 29th year, the Science Olympiad has become the largest team science and technology competition in North America. It should be noted that the competition also highlights UW River Falls' strength in the sciences, including especially its physics program, which in 2010 ranked 4th in the number of graduates compared to all comprehensive institutions across the nation. So hats off to Chancellor Van Galen and the UW River Falls campus community. You may recall at our last meeting that we honored Green Bay's First Nations Studies program with a Regents Diversity Award. I have a follow-up on that award. Later this month, UW Green Bay will present one of its distinguished alumni awards to Maria Hinton, a 1979 graduate in communication and the arts. What is probably more remarkable is that Maria is 101 years of age and will turn 102 in June. She is a revered tribal elder who remains an active force in preserving Oneida stories, language, and culture. Her keen memory was critical to the Oneida Preserve the Language movement, which UW Green Bay has been closely involved in. One of Wisconsin's last surviving native speakers, Maria grew up in a household that spoke only Oneida, learning English at the government school at age 10. After receiving her UW Green Bay diploma, she helped found the tribe's Turtle Elementary School and worked there well into her 90s. Only 2 years ago, Mrs. Hinton and Professor Cliff Abbott, who you might recall spoke at our last meeting when they won the award, completed their invaluable, long-awaited recording of a spoken word dictionary of Oneida, regarded as one of the world's most endangered languages. Next week, UW-Whitewater will celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Innovation Center at Whitewater University Technology Park, and by all accounts, it's been a very successful first year. The $5.7 million, 38,000 square foot business incubator is apparently nearly 70% full. Robert Young, executive director of the Technology Park, recently told the Wisconsin State Journal that most of the tenants being recruited are technology innovation-based companies, adding, quote, "I'm looking for companies that are looking to take advantage of the resources we have at our university." The park and the Innovation Center, which are collaborative projects of the city, of the Whitewater Community Development Authority, and UW-Whitewater, are just an example, I think, of Whitewater's commitment to regional engagement, economic growth, and the Wisconsin idea. So I congratulate Chancellor Telfer, who's been very, very active on the board of that effort. And while they're into building, UW-Whitewater might, I thought, consider another project, Dick, expanding its trophy shelf. UW-Whitewater is proving to be a very formidable force in the world of college athletics these days. In the past few months, the Warhawks have claimed the national championship titles in men's football, men's basketball, men's and women's wheelchair basketball, and gymnastics. I understand there were some real thrillers along the way. I know there were. The men's basketball team, for one, overcame an 18-point deficit to beat Cabrini College 63-60. That win, incidentally, makes UW-Whitewater the first school in Division III history to win a national basketball championship and football title in the same year. Meanwhile, the women's wheelchair basketball team also rallied when it really mattered. After having lost to the University of Alabama twice Earlier in the year, the Whitewater women came through when the championship was on the line, trouncing the Crimson Tide 63-34 to claim their first national championship. That same weekend, the men's wheelchair basketball team routed University of Illinois 101-60 to defend its national title and claim its 10th overall championship. And finally, in late March, the Whitewater gymnastics team tied the SUNY College at Brockport for a share of the National Collegiate Gymnastics Association championship. So obviously just an incredibly impressive run for the athletics program at Whitewater. So congratulations on that to Chancellor Telfer and the whole community. And Dick's next job will be as president of the NCAA, which will make his Whitewater gig look like a real cakewalk. Speaking of athletic pursuits, UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Mike Lovell, who's not here today, but has long been known by many of us for lacing up his sneakers, a very serious runner. He's accepted a friendly challenge from Concordia University President Patrick Ferry to see which university will field the largest team of faculty, students, and staff at the Milwaukee Lakefront Marathon next October. Under the Claws versus Paws challenge, the university team with the fastest team average at the end of the race will be declared the winner. Chancellor Lovell is captain of Team Paws, which I understand includes about 100 runners. So it sounds like a very serious business. There are training runs offered 3 times a day during the week, and there are also marathon seminars, clinics, and other support resources. So a lot of us claim our best ideas come when we're running, so we'll be expecting Chancellor Lovell to have a lot of good ideas between now and October. Right, Johannes? Very good. That concludes my report for the day, Mr. President.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll turn to my portion of the agenda with a variety of things. The first is that we've been provided with a report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board, and I wonder if there are any questions or comments. Mark.
I'd just like to express our appreciation. In our last meeting, we approved a number of new associate degrees that articulate into the university system, and I want to thank those institutions for working with us on that and providing those expanded opportunities for our graduates. Thank you.
Do you have any examples of which of our institutions you...
Sure. CVTC, Chippewa Valley Technical College, has an engineering technologist associate degree with 3 tracks, and those articulate to Stout, and so our graduates can go to Stout as a junior. And my expectation is that will be a choice of many of those graduates. So that'd be an example.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to provide a brief second update on the status of the recommendations made by our 2 2011-12 ad hoc committees. I will call one the Smith Committee report on UW system structure and governance, and the Bradley Committee report on board roles and responsibilities. The board's February discussion regarding governance indicated general agreement that institutional level advisory boards, including the possibility of Regent involvement, were a worthy approach. Proposed revisions to relevant Regent policies are being drafted for consideration at a future meeting. Equally important, the legislative task force that Mike chairs took up the subject of governance at his meeting Wednesday, and we will hear about that, I think, from Regent Falbo later this morning. As for the roles and responsibilities recommendations, we are moving ahead with implementation. As one example, the new READY, Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee will meet for the first time today, and we'll do that as a committee of the whole in just a few minutes. A second example is Jane's work with system personnel who work closely with each of our standing committees. Meetings with Mark Nook and Rebecca Karoff, Michael Morgan and Debbie Durkin, and David Miller and Judy Knoll have been productive. Committee staff identified routine agenda items that could be eliminated or delegated, as well as strategies that will enhance the ability of the committees to focus on necessary and substantive items. My understanding from Jane is that at least 2 of the committees spent some time yesterday considering how to streamline and focus agendas, so more changes are forthcoming. It is expected that the format of the Friday committee reports will evolve over time. I'm confident that through the use of written, primarily digital reports. We will reduce the time of committee chair reports as suggested by the Bradley Committee. I'm also confident that progress will continue on another front, the engagement of Regents in more macro topics, including chancellor presentations that highlight strategic issues. I will tell you that I read the digital reports for today, but I'm not going to ask if everybody else did or not. This is our experimental time. Finally, Regent Bradley's committee volunteered to reconvene at a later time to assess the implementation of its recommendations, and while I will not be here, I think that would be a worthwhile endeavor for my successors to consider. Next is bylaw provisions. The agenda calls it Revisions to Board of Regents Bylaws, Chapter 1. The proposed revisions are in your packets. A bit of context information is relevant. Soon after Jane began her work as board secretary, Chuck Pruitt, who was then the board president, and I requested that she take on the long-term project of reviewing our existing bylaws and, as appropriate, recommending revisions. And we did that in part because of my rather long-time experience in public government litigation, that judges like nothing better than to remind you that your bylaws say you can't do what you're trying to do now, so why not keep your bylaws up to date? And Jane's working on that, and it has other substantive advantages as well. The revisions proposed today are an early step in that process. They accomplish several things. They recognize that the majority of the board's meetings are two-day meetings, and that the board recently reaffirmed its schedule of 8 regular meetings per year. Other changes update notice requirements for special meetings and otherwise improve the special meetings language. It's in your packet, so I won't go over all of the other details. With the hope that you've looked at these and thought about them, I will now move the adoption of Resolution 24C, that upon the recommendation of the President of the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System, the Board of Regents approve the attached revisions to update Chapter 1 of the bylaws of the Board. Is there a second to my motion? Mark? Any discussion? Any comments on anything that we've proposed? I don't think anything's earth-shaking at all, but it does bring it into conformance with what we're doing in most cases. All right, if not, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Sorry, Mark.
I just wanted to make a comment, especially for relatively new regents. I think there are many examples, but I think this is just another in a series of examples of of how we made a good decision in hiring Jane Rideau with a combination of experience on the University of Wisconsin system, an educational background, which includes a law degree, and an attention to detail. One of the things we were talking about when we hired Jane was the kinds of things that the president of the board could delegate. But you can't delegate unless the person has the skills to be able to perform. And we see many examples, and I think this is just another of those examples.
Well said. And with Chuck not here, I can take full credit for having Jane as the secretary. We're now going to do something a little bit different. We're going to recess our meeting, and we're going to reconvene immediately as a committee of the whole, which means that we're meeting as a committee of all of us, not to take any action as a board. And we're doing that to have a meeting of the READY Committee. And the reason for that is that I felt it important to show the world, as well as ourselves, that we deem this committee to be of significant importance, that we want the full board to be involved in it at least for one or more meetings, and then it probably will become more of a typical standing committee of ours. But for this time, I'd like everyone to know that we're taking this very seriously, and we're all going to participate and hear what's being presented to us and talk about and think about this very important subject matter for the people of our state as we go forward. So, Jane, would you take the role, even though it's a formality, of the READY Committee?
Regent Bartel. Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Crane. Regent Drew. Regent Evers. Regent Falbo. Regent Higgins. Regent Many-Dietz, Regent Pointer, Regent Pruitt, Regent Roberts, Regent Shervin, Regent Smith, Regent Spector,
Here.
Regent Tyler, Regent Vasquez, Regent Walsh, Regent Whitburn. A quorum of the committee is present.
Thank you, Jane. A vital substantive recommendation of the Ad hoc Committee on System Board of Regents' Roles and Responsibilities was that the Board create a standing committee focused on research, economic development, and innovation. The recommendation reflected the committee's conclusion that in a 21st century economy, UW system institutions and researchers are at the forefront of scientific and technological developments. At this inaugural meeting of the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee, it is appropriate to highlight the purposes of the READY Committee as envisioned by the committee that proposed its creation. First, to raise the priority of the knowledge economy on the Regent topic list and signal the Board's recognition of the importance of the system's scientific and technical work in moving the state forward. Second, to highlight for state and local leaders the role and potential of UW system institutions in addressing the state's economic development challenges. Third, to recognize that institutions from multiple sectors within the UW system are involved in important research and economic development work. This, our first meeting of the READY Committee, will provide a special opportunity to highlight partnerships involving economic development. Before we begin, I know Kevin has a few words about the search for an Associate Vice President for Economic Development, which parallels what the committee's doing in effect. Kevin.
Thank you, Mike. I think in this system we've long recognized the importance of the research that goes on at every one of our UW institutions and the connection between that work and the economic viability, the quality of life in the state. And as an aside, I think one of the things we have done right, and we do a lot of it, and we will do yet more of it in this system, is to connect that research to undergraduate education so that more and more of our undergraduates have an opportunity to be involved while they're still in their undergraduate years with a research or a research team at their institutions, sometimes at other institutions that are carrying on some very cutting-edge research, and we had the opportunity to see the examples of some of those at the posters in the Rotunda event a month or so ago. In the past, I think we've had opportunities to focus on this work through the board's standing committees from time to time as new proposals, emerging issues would be taken up under the banner of research contracts or new facilities or expanded graduate degree programs. The creation of this new READY Committee reflects the UW's increasingly important role in this area, and it also aligns with the changes we're making in the UW system staff. As I first mentioned to you back in February, and this is to go back to Mike's reference, we've been working to create a new position in UW system administration that will provide leadership for the economic development portfolio. The new position will be funded 50% by the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, reflecting a very strong university-state partnership that will help us address the needs of established industries, fledgling startups, and growing communities all over Wisconsin. Search and screen committee for the position, which is underway. The search includes a broad mix of individuals representing economic development organizations in Wisconsin and UW institutions. It's got about half and half inside the university and outside the university membership on the search and screen committee, including Regent Higgins, who's kind of the man in the middle between the insiders and the outsiders. So I want to especially thank Paul Jaden and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation for its assistance in shaping the position and for the joint funding. They were very receptive to the notion of our doing this position that way. So with that backdrop, Regent Spector, I think it's safe to say that this change to the board's committee structure comes at a very opportune time, and we're ready for the READY Committee.
Very nice. Very nice. Good. Our first presentation is going to be one regarding a new regional consortium of educational institutions known as Northward. We heard a little bit about that yesterday as part of that outstanding presentation that we got from the UW Superior people. To lead the presentation entitled Northward, that's W-E-R-D, A New Promise for Regional Education, I turn to newly inaugurated Chancellor Wachter and Dr. Bob Meyer, President of the Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College.
Good morning. We're very, very pleased to be able to be the first ones to present at the READY Committee. As you know, in the area of economic development in particular, none of us can really do this on our own. So we truly believe in the power of partnerships, and that's why I'm so pleased to have my colleague, Dr. Bob Meyer, here this morning as we kick this presentation off. This really is a special time in northern Wisconsin, and I think it's sort of the perfect storm of events that are happening. For a long time, maybe not much was happening on the economic development front, at least in terms of some of our communities. But with the development of companies like Kestrel Aircraft coming in, where they're talking of perhaps 600 new jobs, mining, and some of the other activities that are taking place in Ashland and Bayfield, that this is really an excellent time. We're also seeing a lot of new leadership in many of our educational institutions, so there's kind of a new vibrancy in terms of wanting to get together and get things done. And finally, of course, we've got the push happening in terms of what's happening with the legislature in terms of its interest and WEDEC in cultivating economic development efforts. So just a little bit about what is Northward. It's the Northwest Wisconsin Educators for Regional Development. We did have some other titles that we had, including one that had the word nerd in it, and we thought, well, we know we're educational institutions, but maybe that wasn't the message that we wanted to convey. It is an 8-member consortium of K through 20. Really, it says K through 16 up there, but it's K through 20, so we're reaching all the way back to the lowest grades to the highest grades in terms of getting together to work together. This group really is explicitly, it's not the only thing that it does, but it really is explicitly motivated to help get these institutions together to focus on economic development and economic research, supporting the activities to make those things happen. I say it's not completely focused on economic development because we know with a lot of our institutions that we could be much more effective and efficient in terms of working with each other to do things like creating partnerships, articulation agreements, really trying to figure out this idea of laddering, where you've got steps that might take place from the high school to the technical colleges, from the technical college onto our university system. So making that transition and those ladders as seamless as possible. And it really is supposed to tie into other regional efforts that are going on, and Bob's going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but our work we see is very integral to supporting other economic development agencies, whether that's happening in a city or happening within the region. So who is this wondrous set of 8 institutions? We're going to start with the 4-year institutions. UW-Superior obviously is one of the first ones. In fact, if we come to a Q&A part, we have 2 of our folks sitting in the audience who have been in there really from the ground floor, which is Peter Nordgren, associated with our outreach office, and then Julianne Raymond, who's associated with our Small Business Development Center. We're the public side. Northland College, located up in Ashland, is our one of our private partners, led by Dr. Mike Miller. It includes 2 technical colleges. That includes WITC, Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College, with its multiple sites in Ashland, Hayward, Ladysmith, New Richmond, Rice Lake, Spooner, and Superior. So we're talking fairly wide geographic coverage. And Northland Technical College, including Antigo, Medford, Phillips, Spencer, Wausau, and Wittenberg. Next step down in that ladder that we're talking about is our 2-year institutions. So very explicitly UW-Barron County and Rice Lake. And then Lac-Courte Ojibwe Community College, located out in Hayward, with locations at Lac de Flambeau, Washburn, and Webster. And in fact, there we'll see there where we held the signing ceremony. Another partner is UW Extension and the 16 counties that it serves, and we feel one of our critical partners in particular because of their reach. We also have included that K-12 factor with CISA 12, who serves 17 districts and 6 different counties. If you look at the sheer scope of what this relationship means to northern Wisconsin, you're talking about a combined enrollment of over 45,000 students, K through 20, including full-time, part-time, graduate, undergraduate, public, private, and homeschooled students. So the potential impact really for our part of the state is quite significant. I'm going to turn it over to Bob now, and he's going to talk a little bit about the roots of Northward and what its evolutionary path has been.
Thank you, Chancellor Wachter. And good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to present with Renee. Renee also circulated, you probably have them at your table, a little fact sheet on Northward. The background on this actually started, I jumped systems in 2008 from the University of Wisconsin Stout. You remember. And one of the first things that we did when I came to Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College, a number of us got together. You can see on the slide here, we had a technology conference in Ashland, Wisconsin, actually hosted at our campus at WITC there, and a number of players from Northwest Wisconsin attended that. Including UW-Barron County. I think Paul Chase is on there. In fact, at that time he was in his role with UW-Barron County. And many people from UW-Superior and UW-Extension. Having come from UW-Stout, one of my observations was that there was an absence of regional economic development in the far northwest counties of Wisconsin, and that was shared with my colleagues from UW-Superior and UW-Extension. The conversation there at that conference was we really need to have something like Momentum West, which I enjoyed during my time at Stout, working with the economic development community, having the university tied to that, among with several UW partners, I saw as an extreme benefit, as did many of the other partners at the meeting. So what we tried to do is take a look at, and this points out on the slide that the WIN Lake Superior chapter of WIN, the Wisconsin Innovation Network, really picked up the torch and started pursuing regional economic development in northwest Wisconsin with the absence of that. So we were really looking at something that modeled, you're familiar with Seven Rivers and southwest Wisconsin, New North, and the Green Bay area. We really looked at that very closely because of the very formalized structure that New North and New Era had with the economic development community, having an organization as well as the educational partners in the area. As it points out here, we studied those models with the hopes of developing a regional economic effort collectively. It took a while for that to really gain some traction. It didn't among the educational institutions. There was pretty good commitment there. But we're now at a point where Northwest Regional Planning Commission is organizing a 10-county effort on regional economic development. What our interest is as an educational consortium is to complement that. As we hear from that group identified needs for workforce development and programming, that's what we intend to do, is to respond to those needs. Again, we did look at the New Era model. You can see in this picture Linda Bartelt from New Era actually came over and was at our signing event, which was March 28th, and did a great job giving us an overview of what's going on in northeast Wisconsin as a model, and that's what we intend to try to clone. I should mention that a number of players are here today. Julianne Raymond from the UW area, the Superior area SBDC is here, just behind me, as well as Peter Nordgren, who are very instrumental in seeing this down the road, as well as Jerry Hemd, as it points out on this slide. Jerry's a faculty member here at UW Superior, has a background in business and economic development. He's also part of the UW Extension community, does a lot of work with that, and he really helped us with our goal setting, developing a mission and a vision for the organization. The purpose then is to continue a conversation among our educational institutions and get involved with strategic initiatives and collaborations for educational attainment. A good example for us at WITC, we have a number of programs that we have currently in place and are launching. You mentioned health information technology today in your report, Kevin, and we've got a 2-year program in that where I was looking for ways that we can articulate to a 4-year program. We just inked one with our 2-year early childhood development program at WITC, and that's articulated now to a 4-year program here at UW Superior. Those are the kinds of initiatives that we want to pursue together. This slide shows you what we have in terms of some of the unique aspects of what we're trying to do. Really, if you boil it down, it gets into 2 areas, and that is support economic development, as you'll see in a future slide, with respect to doing research on the market and identifying where the workforce needs are, and then as educational institutions working together on co-programming or developing pathways for our students for attainment. We mentioned that the CISA 12 group is involved with this. We want to be very connected to the high schools and the middle schools. We feel that's very important in how we move forward and how we articulate what we've got available in terms of that laddering that Renee talked about. Where can students start, stop, get off, get back on, and transfer the credits to make that pathway a reality. As you can see here, the organizations will facilitate educational partnerships with regional development in mind for Northwest Wisconsin. We'll facilitate further educational collaboration by leveraging our collective resources. I don't have to tell you, these are difficult economic times. We can't do all the things that we want to, and actually the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's the way we're looking at it. Here you can see some of the dignitaries that were on hand, including Chancellor Cross and others for the signing event that was March 28th. All of the members of the organizations that Renee mentioned were on hand. And our written commitment on March 28th reads as follows. Our institutions will carry out these activities in a spirit of mutual support and shared vision, focusing upon the important work of improving the quality of life and economic strength of the region we serve. So now we get to the point where we've got this organization in place. We're committed to the idea of working together. Now the real fun starts, and that is actually making the collaboration work. So I get to turn this back over to Renee, but before I do, I just want to thank everybody that was involved in Renee's selection. With the inauguration yesterday and celebrating her appointment, I think it was very appropriate that her theme is focusing on partnerships for progress. I can tell you as a participant in developing partnerships with Renee and the institution here, she's very deeply committed to that. It's not just a slogan. She's practicing what she's preaching here, folks. She's a real gem and a pleasure to work with. So all of those that were involved with her selection did, I think, a fantastic job. We're very, I think, honored and fortunate to have Renee on hand and to be able to work with her. So with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Renee.
No, I did not pay him to say that. The next part is always the challenging part. We had the formal signing ceremony in Hayward, held at Lacuta-Ray Community College, and we had a lot of media attention. I think the fact that that was a very visible event was one of the things that's going to help keep it going, is that people have now expectations and very public expectations to see that we're making progress on these issues. The Visions Northwest Board, that is currently in formation and forming, and so we will have actual formal representation on that board, so there will be a very direct connection between economic development efforts and the educational side, which we represent, and we're very excited about that. I know there's some questions really about funding of Visions Northwest and what might be happening out of the state, but I can promise you that even if that side of the equation doesn't move forward, the educational institutions that you see in Northward are committed regardless. We think it's important enough that we need to cooperate, that we'll be working together. And it's interesting because somebody asked us, well, isn't it competitive? Aren't you guys competitors? And we really had to smile and look at each other because I think what each of us do is really fairly unique, and it's that bringing together the best of what we do that's going to make this partnership work. The way that we're currently structured is we've got work groups that are ready to act. We're talking about a next tentative meeting of these work groups on June 15th. The first one is to respond to regional needs and economic development, and I'll be the chair of that particular committee. The second group is really much more focused on the pathways and looking at academic advising. You know, how do we make students aware of the opportunities that are out there, get them connected, get them plugged in, and make sure that they have seamless integration. And so that will be Lynn Finch, who's at WITC Hayward. The plan is, as all plans go, we are planning to meet at least quarterly with the working groups working monthly, and then having an annual meeting where we elect our officers. How do we measure success, I think, is the important one, and we're having quite a bit of dialogue about this because success can take many forms, whether it's looking at the number of graduates in the region, the number that actually go on and matriculate on to careers that are directly linked with the region. We know that being a key influence on job readiness is very important to all of us, so we have that as a primary goal, and that people really look to us as a major stimulus for job placement in the region. Like I said, this is a very exciting time, kind of an unprecedented time here in northern Wisconsin, even though the model itself might not be unique. The degree to which we're having conversations and partnerships really is. So I can't emphasize that part of it enough. And we've got, like we said, a whole crew of us up here this morning, so if you have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them.
All right, let's turn to that. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions or comments? Tim.
I just wanted to ask, in general, how would you expect Vice President of the UW System for Economic Development to work with you guys to accomplish your goals?
Right now, we have no idea.
Fair enough.
Because it hasn't been, it isn't in place yet, and I know there's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of moving pieces, especially in economic development, and I'm not as familiar with the southern part of the state, but I know in the northern part it's been really a challenge to kind of get your arms around all of the groups that are working together, and so I think having that person probably serve as the focal point for us being able to connect, I think will be very important.
Having been in the system, I think there are probably some opportunities there in the sense that, as Renee pointed out, there are a lot of different groups, regional groups in the area, helping us develop, I think, in terms of best practices and looking at what's out there, communicating those back through Renee, and the partnership would be very helpful for us. On the other end, as we hear things from our budding economic development community in terms of what the programming needs are, I think that would be helpful as a kind of a listening post in terms of developing those programs and moving them along, and also encouraging the partnership that's taking place, because there are a lot of assets out there that can be leveraged together when we develop these things. So in that spirit, I think all the citizens of Wisconsin would benefit. Yeah.
Okay. We applaud your efforts and your energy, and we think you have great potential, I know, and thank you very much. We'll keep us posted. Our second presentation comes from WISIS Technology Foundation. We have several special guests here today to address what's titled UW Comprehensives, a resource for economic growth through technology development. And to start us off, I turn to Dr. Maliakal, if I pronounced it properly. John, the Managing Director of the Weisses Technology Foundation. Dr. John.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation to come and participate in the board meeting. This is a special honor for us. Before I start, let me just say a word of thanks to UW System leadership under the leadership of Kevin Riley. I want to especially mention some names here, Debbie Durkins and Tom Stafford. They have been closely associated with Voices activities and in terms of guiding Voices in technology transfer in our undergraduate institutions. I also want to mention Stephen Colson and his team in terms of partnering with Voices to undertake grant programs in our campuses. My presentation will cover a very brief overview of Voices as an organization, what we do, what is our mission, and also tell you some of the unique challenges that we face as a technology transfer organization for undergraduate institutions. But I also want to tell you what are the resources, some of the very important and unique resources that we have within UW System and within the state for us to form partnerships and actually technology transfer happen within our comprehensive campuses. If I can Voices was formed in 2000 for the mission of undertaking technology transfer in the comprehensive and two-year colleges. Actually, our services began in 2005, and at this time we have a 5-member team serving about 110,000 students and about 3,500 faculty members. As I mentioned, we do face some unique challenges because technology transfer is not very routine and normal in undergraduate institutions. So if you look at some of the challenges that we face, of course the foremost is the lack of resources, which I'm sure you are not unfamiliar with that demand. But we also lack the research and development culture in our teaching campuses. We do research in those campuses, but they are not focused on product development. So that is another issue that we are facing. Of course, lack of product ideas. We have a large number of very good, excellent scientists and scientific fields, but we do not routinely come up with ideas that can be transitioned into products from our campuses. Of course, we are full-time teaching faculty, so we get very little time to do research. So those are some of the unique challenges that we face. But what do we have within the system and within the state? Out of the 3,500 faculty members, almost 300 to 400 faculty members have very unique skills, technology skills, that can be used to make products, conduct research and development and make products. So that is a huge resource that we have within the system and within the state. Secondly, if you step outside of UW system, by one estimate, Wisconsin has almost 300,000 small businesses. Many thousands of these small companies are high-tech companies, 1 or 2-person companies, and they do have product ideas, but they don't have the research capability or research resources to undertake research. Secondly, if you look at our healthcare organizations, we have several very progressive research healthcare organizations and about between 10 to 14,000 medical professionals, highly trained medical professionals within our state. They have ideas about how to create innovation within healthcare. So if you put all these things together, within the UW system we have the technical expertise, but we don't have very many product ideas. We have the small companies, several thousands of them with the product ideas but don't have the technical capabilities, as well as the healthcare organizations that do have innovation ideas but do not have the bioengineering or biomedical capabilities within these institutions. So our strategy for building a pipeline of technology products from our comprehensive campuses is described in this slide. Where we are going to build partnerships between small companies and healthcare organizations and our campuses, comprehensive campuses. Small companies, as I mentioned, will bring us product ideas. Healthcare organizations will bring us innovation ideas about what are the innovations required, challenges required. and our faculty that can then make those solutions within our campuses. We also want to form alliances with our state government because both funding as well as public relations, for public relations issues, this is very important. This is the global strategy for VICES. How about the specific steps? There are 3 specific programs that we are advancing at this time. First of all, I mentioned that we have between 300 to 400 faculty members. Some of them have very good ideas. So many of them are working in emerging technology fields, and we want to capture their talent and creativity. For that, we want to create the so-called emerging technology centers. We already have about 5 emerging technology centers in different campuses. For example, UW Platteville has a nanotechnology center. So Platteville can, in fact, focus and prioritize some of their resources in the nanotechnology because the faculty have the capability to conduct research and produce products there. The second initiative is called Wisconsin Small Company Advancement Program, or for short WSCAP. Again, the basic idea is, can we make the connection between the small company that requires product development with our campus that has the technical expertise to conduct the research. So under the WSCAP, we can again make that link, let the ideas flow from the companies to our campuses or vice versa. And the third initiative is the Wisconsin Medical Entrepreneurship Foundation, or WISMF for short. Again, the idea here is make that connection between the healthcare organization and small campus. So let me very briefly give you some summary of the WSCAP and WISMF ideas here. We took the idea of the WSCAP, the partnership between the companies and the campuses, to the state legislature. They provided us with about $2 million as a seed fund to conduct this as a pilot program in 2010. What we have accomplished with that $2 million is that we have at this time 21 projects involving 17 companies and 9 campuses. We have allocated this $2 million for these 21 projects. We have provided student internships that will account for 12,000 hours of student internship. And we have also provided 32 months of release time for our faculty and created 16 high-paying jobs. Now, this is just the beginning. Many of these projects will take maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 years to complete, and we hope that many of these projects will result in actual marketable products that will go from our campuses into the private sector. These projects are distributed throughout the Wisconsin, as seen from this slide here. So let me give you some examples of the WSCAP projects. One of the interesting projects that we are undertaking at UW Whitewater in partnership with a company out of Heartland is the removal of mercury from fish tissues. Now, as you recognize that this is a big industry for Wisconsin, 2.5 billion industry, employing almost 30,000 employees. Now, many of the lakes in Wisconsin are contaminated with high mercury, and which is deleterious to the human health. And according to the estimation of the partner company, if we can remove at least 60% of the mercury from the fish tissue, that can be consumed by humans. The current research program at Whitewater, we can remove up to 80% of the mercury. So we already have a marketable process developed at UW Whitewater in partnership with this company, and we are able to take this technology to the market hopefully by end of 2012 or at least 2013. Moving on to a next project from UW Oshkosh, where the researchers are creating a supercapacitor. You recognize the importance of supercapacitors in the changing world of energy. This is going to be a very important industry, and the researchers at Oshkosh, they were able to show that they can increase the density, energy density of the supercapacitors between 4 to 24-fold, even in the laboratory model, the prototype model. So once they refine the prototype and then they can market this prototype, this is going to be a significant revenue generator for UW system. Another project that we are working with a company out of Spooner near Superior is the extraction of nutraceuticals and antiviral compounds from cranberry, another important crop for Wisconsin. The team has already identified 3 compounds that have shown significant efficacy in laboratory testing for antiviral activity. At this time, we are further refining these compounds. We are beginning to establish contacts with industry groups that will allow us to take further testing as well as develop these compounds for either therapeutic applications or nutraceutical purposes. But what is really the economic impact of these programs, these projects? Because that's an important question that the state will ask you in terms of what is the contribution that the comprehensives are making for economic development. This is an important slide. We have a program to develop a redesigned wheelchair in partnership with a company. And we have commissioned this study with North Star Consulting Group, and they have come up with these numbers. And as you can see that when fully implemented, the wheelchair project will create 245 jobs. That will result in approximately $73 million in economic impact. Furthermore, it will generate $1.6 million in tax revenue for the state. We will continue to follow each of these 21 projects in terms of the economic impact of these projects once they are fully marketed or implemented. At this time, I would like to invite a team from UW Stout, Kenny Smith and the student, who have developed a unique hydrogen fuel cell.
Thank you, M. John. It's a pleasure and honor here to present this newly developed hydrogen fuel cell. It's a direct product of the support that the UW system and the Weisses Foundation has provided. It's an example of the high-tech research that can come out of our campus facilities. Specifically, this came from the UW Stout campus. And the project is really exciting. We've provided several students high-tech internship research projects in the development of this. Destin Peters is one of them. He's stuck with it. I admire him for that. With this fuel cell, we've taken a very complicated idea and simplified it to make it more readily manufacturable, in fact, very inexpensive. One of our missions has been to drive the cost of fuel cells down, and we have succeeded in that with this particular design concept and the fuel cell itself. We call it a pressure-balanced fuel cell. It's a pretty impressive device, if you ask me. I might get a big head here, but it's okay. It's been a long time coming. It's many years of development, and we're at the point here, thanks to Weisses Foundation. They've been connecting us with actual commercial end users. Columbia Parkar down in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, and Marquis Yacht Company over by Pulaski is interested in actually installing a demonstration fuel cell this year. So within maybe 2 to 3 years for sure, we should be ready to commercialize this on a large scale, and we'll have driven the cost of the fuel cell down to where it should be affordable for almost anybody to purchase who would be buying, say, a generator or a battery pack or what have you. And right now we're getting ready to ramp up production of different components or more components to enlarge this, and we're going to actually put it into a golf cart here within the next few weeks. Be driving that around our campuses and showing the world that it is possible. There we go, Dustin. But,
producing power.
Go ahead, Dustin. I'd like Dustin to just tell him about his experience as a student working on this project, if you would like, Dustin.
Sure.
Please.
Well, I came about Kenny here as a student at UW Stout. I worked with him as a student employee, and I was an engineering technology student at UW Stout. And I came about this, and it just seemed right for me. I was able to bring something to the table, I think, for him with my engineering background and my knowledge in material science and my ability to machine things for him and get this thing going. And it's really been beneficial for me. I'm able to see kind of the entrepreneurial side of the business and the product development, which is very interesting, and I think it'd be beneficial for almost any student to be able to do something like this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Destin. And just to let you know, like I say, I do reaffirm we're going to get this commercialized, and we have many more ideas to put through the university system. Tremendous amount of ideas, and we never stop generating them, at least upstairs here. So it's an honor. Thank you. It's exciting. If there's any questions, please ask. Yes.
Jim.
The process of moving from the idea to the product. Besides the person who conceives the idea, what kind of facilitation do you value in that process? What other expertise do you need other than, geez, I can build a fuel cell? How do you get from, you know, I got a discovery or I got an idea to I got a product?
Thank you, Tim. Sheer tenacity is the quick answer. One, it's the support of people like Weisis and MJOHN believing that I do have an idea, a valid idea, and providing the funding necessary, and the UW campus to provide the facilities to generate a PDF. And it's no easy or trivial task, because you've got to take from up here, on paper, we find students such as Destin to actually, for like myself personally, to sit down with and tell them what I want in actually a SolidWorks, a CAD program, you know. And from there, it goes to budgeting. How much is this going to cost to build the tooling and all this? Where are we going to build the tooling? And on and on and on. And it starts with the drawing, goes to the tooling, then it takes the assembly and patience with assembly and trial and error, and finally you have a finished product, and then we start to go out and demonstrate to the world that we have this finished product. From there, we have to generate more ideas for more resources to fund further development and the marketing thereof. And finally, we meet with potential industrial partners such as Columbia Park Car or Marquis Yacht, and they say, yes, you really do have something. And they say, well, how much does this cost? And I can show them the figures, and I can say, yes, I can cut this by magnitudes compared to another fuel cell. And the efficiency is many % better than any other fuel cell on the market. And I could just show them the simplicity of this, and they're ready to say, yes, let's do a demonstration. And then once we demonstrate it, provided we are successful in that, don't have any burps, then the next step will be actually to get the resources to take it to the private sector for actual full-scale manufacturing and commercialization. So I hope that explains it.
Oh, I think that really it does a great job of emphasizing the importance of the tenacity you talked about. And I think what I also heard was there are third-party actors involved in this. You know, you as the developer, it's great if you can go to somebody, a Weisis partner, who says, well, we've got some people who might be receptive, let's go out and talk to them. Is that the kind of facilitation that helps?
Oh, it's imperative. Without that, we'd be nowhere. So, yes. Because one person can't do it all alone. There's a big picture out there to get a product from conception to being seen, for the world to be seen. And it takes people like MJOHN, Weisis, and our STOUT organization, and everybody all together, and all the students and all the ideas conforming together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gary.
You said it's going to take 3 years, you think, before it's manufactured. Once you begin manufacturing, how will you use it, and what will they cost?
Interesting question. No more than 3 years. I'm hoping to be ready this year. We're actually in the process of developing tooling for the next generation already that should be ready within 2 weeks from today. But what will the cost be? We're looking at building a 5 to 7 kilowatt fuel cell to run like small golf carts, battery charging systems, remote cabins, RVs, boats, a whole complex of devices that would use electricity.
So it'll be the charger for the battery system.
It would be a charger such as a hybrid system. In the golf cart, we're looking at a hybrid system.
Do you see those actually being installed in a golf cart type thing and being the power?
Absolutely. At Columbia Park Car, we're looking at integration into manufacturing of the carts. So yes, we're looking at a 1 kilowatt fuel cell to maintain the batteries, so you can basically run the golf cart for days on end without having to charge it.
And how do you put the fuel in?
We have basically it's a hydrogen tank that you could get pretty much anywhere. The business model we're looking at is going to follow the same line of the propane industry. There's essentially no difference in this business model and that of the propane industry, so we can counter all the hearsayers that ask, where do you get hydrogen? It's ubiquitous. It's essentially everywhere. It's just that people aren't used to that business model. It's right in front of our face. But we're going to follow that, and the cost of filling one of them is about $3. It should run the cell for many, many hours, under full load conditions even. The cost of the fuel cell right now, we should be able to get a 5 kilowatt cell in under $5,000 right out of the starting gate, and we should be able to drop the cost significantly after we get to production.
And will you be able to plug other tools into that then?
Absolutely.
So it'll be like a portable generator.
Yes, it will, in a sense, be a portable generator, or a permanent generator if you attach it to a house.
It's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
Maybe.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Does M. John have more?
We have two more teams coming up here. By the way, Kenny had this idea. He has been dabbling in hydrogen fuel cell for almost 15, 20 years. And I should say that it took a whiz cap and a Wisers to bring his ideas to light.
Yes, it did.
So the next topic that I briefly want to mention is the WISMF idea, that connecting the healthcare institutions to the campuses. And I will not go through those in detail, but just to give you an idea, the network that we have put together at this time has Aurora, Baycare, Marshfield, Wisers, the associated campuses, a number of trade organizations, as well as private companies. This network, again, will help bring the ideas from the organizations to our campuses, and very similar to the hydrogen fuel cell, allow us to make prototypes, test them in our campuses or in clinical organizations, and move them into the private industry. Just to give you an example of one of the projects that we are currently considering, has Aurora Healthcare and Wisers and UW Stevens Point are partnering with a small company called APN LLC from Milwaukee to develop a 3D imaging system. Now just imagine that our students from one of the small campuses will be involved actually not only to make this 3D imaging happening, but in fact, two of the faculty members on the campus were at Aurora Hospital actually looking at how this operation is being carried out, how the medical procedure is being carried out. We are already discussing to bring a team of students from the campus to the hospital and to the operating room so that they can observe how this procedure is being conducted. This is invaluable experience for our students. So this is, again, I want to emphasize the point that these partnerships are going to be useful for our students in the long term. At this time, I want to turn over this mic to two students from UW Eau Claire to speak about warfarin therapy. Warfarin, as you know, is a prescription drug, about 2 million prescriptions per year, but it also causes about 3,000 deaths per year because of the bleeding issue. The student team, under the leadership of Professor David Lewis, who is also in the audience, is trying to redesign this complex chemical molecule so that we can make it safer. And our partner in this program is Marshfield Clinic.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, all of you, for inviting us, and it's our pleasure to introduce what we do in the lab to you this morning. In 2009, we developed 2 new candidates of anticoagulant molecules, which we named UWEC-K1 and UWEC-K2. And then we tested them at Marshfield Clinic, but the result was rather puzzling and amazing, we think. And according to our result after 4 days of co-administration with warfarin, neither of these 2 compounds had any effect on rats that we were using, and but when they were co-administrated with like you said, it's K1 and K2, that's what we call. And when after 4 days, K1 had no effect when it was co-administrated with warfarin, but K2 reversed the effect of warfarin, so which was really puzzling and amazing again.
However, after 10 days, we found that K1 had a 50% enhancement of warfarin anticoagulation, whereas K2 had a 300% enhancement of warfarin anticoagulation. So therefore, the focus of our study now is to elucidate the mechanism by which these 2 vitamin K analogs act in order to explain these observations that we've seen in the rat models. Next slide.
So now we're going to share our experience regarding this research project. I started working on this research in fall 2009 with Dr. David E. Lewis. And regarding this research project, I had great chances to present my research poster at both national and state meetings, which include Whiteside's meetings, Wisconsin Technology Symposium in UW Green Bay and UW Whitewater, and American Chemical Society meetings in Boston, Massachusetts, and Denver, Colorado. And after this semester, we both will be graduating from UW Eau Claire, and we will be attending graduate school. Even though I had 2 choices, I think I'll be going to the Ohio State University to get my PhD degree in biochemistry field. And regarding this research, well, first of all, this research experience, undergraduate research experience, really helped both of us, especially just to speak for myself, it helped me realize the joy and frustration of my fellow science researchers. And as an individual, it definitely, taught me lessons like, to be persistent, and I have to have really great high standards of work ethic, all of which will definitely benefit me when I go to grad school or like any industrial work in the future as a research worker. Thank you.
Okay, so again, I'm Katie. I've been working in this research lab for 2 years. I've also had the privilege to attend the National ACS meeting and the State Wisconsin Science and Technology Symposium. I'm happy to say that I'm graduating 4 years with a degree in biochemistry this May, and plan to go to grad school at Ohio State next year. I first decided to attend Eau Claire because of its reputation for quality undergraduate research, and my decision has definitely paid off. Thanks to the support from WISIS, UW system, and of course our mentor, Dr. David Lewis, this research has allowed me to collaborate with other students and faculty, taught me the successes and failures of lab research, and of course being able to go to these meetings where we get to see what chemistry is being performed around the country and the world. So overall, I think that this experience has given me the opportunity and confidence to excel in my next level of education in graduate school. Thanks.
So let me move on to summarize the impact of WISE's WARF UW system collaboration to the system as well as to the state. I thought the best way for us to show you this result is to look at what happened in terms of technology transfer.
John, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
The president of the board and I were talking. Maybe your two student researchers could help us with this. What's the object of your research? Are you trying to reverse the effects of warfarin? What are you trying to learn to do through the research you're working on?
David, you want to? Yes.
Probably need to come up to the mic, Professor.
Teaching in large lecture halls, I thought I was audible from any distance. The problem with warfarin is that for 60 years physicians have been using it, and for 60 years physicians have been cursing it because there are individual variations in dosing that make stable dosing very difficult to predict. What we originally intended, the compounds that the students made, were supposed to be a way of getting around that by targeting a different enzyme in the blood clotting cascade. And as you saw on the slide, it turns out that the two compounds were totally worthless in that particular manner. But as one of the control experiments, they were co-administered with warfarin. And what we suddenly have is something is going on that has dramatically increased the anticoagulant potency of warfarin after that 10-day period. What we are now trying to do is to figure out what has happened, because if we can reduce the amount of the drug that needs to be given to the patient, we have the potential of increasing the safety margin for the patient and the ease of prescribing for the physician. Either way, we wind up with something that's a considerably better drug. And, as an aside, we probably end up with a better rat poison as well, which is itself a health issue given the diseases carried by rats. So the general idea has been to try to get an improved warfarin, or a way of improving warfarin to improve its safety in humans. You've no doubt heard about Pradaxa. It's being advertised all over. Pradaxa now apparently, the other night I was watching TV and I saw a commercial for lawyers looking for patients who've had strokes because of Pradaxa. So clearly Pradaxa is going to have its problems just as warfarin has had its problems over the long term. Anticoagulation is a big deal, and it's a big deal for me personally because I've got 5 stents. And I'm not on warfarin yet, but I can see the day coming, and I really do want it to be a lot better when I get on it.
Well, I'll tell you, as one who has 5 bypasses...
no zipper. No zipper.
It's a great thing you're doing, because I was on warfarin for 2 months, and more blood tests than I want to remember.
It's a pain in the rump to prescribe.
Or at least
it's a
in
pain
the arm.
in the rump to
at least
take.
in the arm.
And my wife was on it for a couple of months after she had her knee replaced. Same problem. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, John.
Thank you. So to get back to the actual overall impact of voices, if you can look at this slide, you can see that what we have done is to look at the 14 years of the past 14 years and divide that into 2 periods, 80 years before voices started full service and 6 years after voices started the full service. You can see in terms of research funding, we have been very effective in bringing more money to our campuses. We have increased from about $900,000 to about $3 million. But look at the discoveries. Before WISES started the services in our campuses, we had 2 discoveries reported to our UW system. At this time, we have 56. So in effect, we have increased the productivity significantly by reducing the amount of money spent per discovery from about $450,000 to $53,000 at this time. The startups, again, a very impressive story here. If you look at the startups, at this time we have 9 startup companies, and I will come back to that in a minute here. But not only that we have startups, these startups are beginning to bring private equity into the state. 2 of the startups were able to bring $2.6 million in the first round of financing. They are just beginning to prepare for the second round of financing, so there will be more money coming into that. High-paying jobs, they have created 32 high-paying jobs because of the research activities, and we are also beginning to bring licensing revenue to the UW system. In terms of extramural funding, we work with the UW system in terms of encouraging faculty to go out and find extramural funding. So at this time we have about $5.2 million in extramural funding. Most importantly, we are competing at the national level. The SBER and SCT are 2 programs, federal programs, that are competitive grants given to small companies to work with the universities. 2 of our companies have been able to win these awards in the tune of about $800,000. So I mentioned the startup companies. If you look at this slide here, this slide of course has 10 companies, but I am not counting the Novascan, which is coming from a UW Milwaukee owned by Weiss's Patent. But otherwise, we have 9 companies from the comprehensive campuses. 3 of the campuses have multiple companies, and there will be more startups coming from our comprehensives down the road. I believe that this is an impressive story, because if you look at many of the leading institutions in the country in terms of entrepreneurship, some of them are listed here. You can see that our researchers, our faculty, and our students, they really deserve the congratulations from our side in terms of entrepreneurship because of these startup activities. So what are the bigger industrial impact that comprehensives can have on Wisconsin? We believe that industrial material, healthcare sector, as well as the renewable energy sector will be significantly impacted by the research activity at this time happening in our campuses. So we think that UW system has a unique opportunity not only to show to the state, but also to the nation that engaging in undergraduate research or engaging the undergraduate institutions in research, we can have a major economic impact in the country. I'm going to conclude by asking your support for some of the several steps that we want to take. One of the steps that we want to take is make the research and development funding sustainable. And one way for us to do this is to take the income generated by the technology transfer activity and put some of that money back into a fund dedicated for research. I think that will at least help you in terms of not going to the state for research funding on a yearly basis. Secondly, I think we should have a uniform policy throughout the system, comprehensive campuses, in terms of encouraging and facilitating research and entrepreneurship by our faculty and students. For example, we can look at the patenting and patenting of the faculty and provide that as a measure for the advancement in their career or for students also. A second point I want to make is about we need to have a approved WISE's guideline that we can take to the campus that will facilitate and make it more effective our work in our campuses. So there is no common guideline at this time, and we are working with the system to come up with such a guideline. And finally, I believe that it is very important for us to at least allocate some more resources in the near term for research and development of our campuses, because we want to continue the success story that we have so far, and we want to strengthen it. At this time, I'm going to stop my presentation and ask Professor Jim Hamilton and an engineering student, Robinson from UW-Platteville, to come and speak to you about faculty entrepreneurship and the importance of engaging our students in these researches. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm Jim Hamilton, and this is Robinson Flagg. We're going to very quickly tell you a little bit about what we've accomplished in Platteville using students like Robbie. And the pictures you see up on the board here are all projects around the world that we work with. The Nano Center that you folks approved and John really created years ago was crucial to the development of working around with industry around the world. and to developing the technology that we did. Next slide, please. We've been rather successful in this. We have a number of startups now, and we've been featured in Scientific American and Science, who won the Governor's Business Plan competition. In 2008, was one of the 30 hot startups in the United States. And we won national finalist in the Clean Tech Open Business competition for our nanotechnology company. Next slide, please. We have 4 startups coming out of my labs in Platteville, and Robbie and students like him are an integral part in doing the work on these sort of things. The first one, Photonic Cleaning Technologies, has sales in 62 countries now. We just had a order from Fiji, and it makes a polymer for protecting and cleaning telescopes and laser optics and things like that. And we work with big companies all over the world and all the world's big physics projects. Exolve is our nanotechnology startup. We received $2 million in Series A funding in December of 2010. We just got another $2 million bridge, and we expect to have products to market in composite polymers and plastics utilizing graphene, the material that received the Nobel Prize in 2010. We have a startup called Posilift, which we already have a distributor from a big defense company to make polymer lifting of fingerprints and other things. Next slide, please. So the big thing is Exolve, these nanotechnologies, what we discovered doing basic research. So I had another company. We were doing all kinds of business all over the world. We were doing basic research. We had no idea of making a product, and I've been told by Wharf lawyers that we made the most fundamental discovery in materials science in years, as the only thing they've seen as fundamental as that is the stem cell patents at Madison. And so we started this company. We work with groups all over the world, and we're really product focused. And the key, next slide, please, to what we're working on is really a combination of basic and applied research to get students and other faculty involved, and WISIS has been a crucial important part of this. And I've been asked to talk about what are the barriers to working with industry. I work a lot in Germany, and it's amazing the difference between what the Germans do and what we do in terms of working with companies. Here in this country, they don't like working with universities. We cost too much, and most importantly, we're too slow. We need to be agile. We need to respond to their needs in months, not semesters, and things like that. The biggest burden in trying to move forward has really been a lot of bureaucracy, which I know everybody's addressing. And we'd really like to work on that. And we're really trying to work with industry and create a new model for building economic development in the state. This work has resulted in around 10 employees now, and we expect to grow really dramatically. Robbie, next slide, please. Why don't you say some of the things you'd like to say?
Okay. Hello, my name is Robinson Flagg. I'm a chemistry major at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. I'm currently in my second year there, and I've been doing research at the Nano Center under Dr. Hamilton the entire time. Some of the things I've worked on and I'm working on recently are ultracapacitors, lithium-ion batteries, and graphene coatings, and it's very interesting work. Some of the things I've been really grateful for and why it's been such a privilege for me is that I'm getting practical experience in my field. So, you can just go to class and learn things, but doing this research, I feel like I'm learning how to use instrumentation and how to be a team player in ways that I can't in the classroom. It's also helped me identify some of my goals and future expectations. Like, for example, when I was first coming to the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, I wasn't really thinking too much about graduate school, but now it's something that's definitely on the map of where I want to go in the future, and I'm very excited for that and the opportunity that doing research has created for me. It's also accompanied my studies really well and really focused my learning. So there are definitely times where I can see something in the lab that I had talked about in class, and it's a really great thing. Other than that, it's been a really awesome opportunity, and I'm really glad I was able to do it. Thank you.
Thanks. We'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Any questions? We can have him come back.
Strike?
Yes, it is. Philip Strike. The boy is my business partner. He's now at Harvard and doing well.
He went to Harvard?
Yes, he went to Harvard.
That's too bad.
I thought everybody went to Ohio State here.
Well, you know, the kids want to leave the state, then they come back to raise your own kids here.
Good.
No.
Good. I know the family well.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. John, Mark would like to have you come back for a moment. Mark has a question for you. Sure.
John, this was just wonderful. And I have two points. First of all, I think what you and your colleagues have demonstrated this morning is what 21st century higher education now includes. We have in the UW system, and maybe it's nationwide, but we have in the UW system 20th century terminology. And we talk about our research institutions. And when some people, us, I'm talking about people in the UW system, talk about our teaching institutions. Well, I don't know that Thule and Katie went to a teaching institution. Because what Thule and Katie are doing is getting an undergraduate education, which they would also get at a, quote, research institution, but they're engaged in some cutting-edge research. So I think we need to work from the regents and the system and the institutions on 21st century technology about how we refer to 21st century terminology about how we refer to ourselves. For many years, a comprehensive institution, this is a long time ago, but they had to work out of the terminology of being referred to as a normal school. So we've made that success. We've got to work out, in my opinion, of the tendency to talk about a teaching institution, suggesting that you go there to get an undergraduate education, and rarely and only as a special event do you have these phenomenal opportunities as part of your education to engage in undergraduate research. You flip that around. When we use terminology and we talk about a research institution, we almost send the message that nobody cares about undergraduate teaching. And yet, the Madison campus, a couple of years ago, launched this huge effort, and it was just wonderful, and we approved it, I think, unanimously about the Madison Undergraduate Initiative. And that, in part, was a message about the fact that we do excellent undergraduate teaching at this research institution. So I'm not asking for you to answer it, but I'm asking if you agree, because you probably have a better perspective than anybody else in this state, given your background and working in this area, do we need to work on a new terminology? Have other states developed a terminology that could help us more accurately describe what these institutions are doing?
I think you very eloquently made the case, Regent Bradley. We believe that the research is an absolutely critical tool, not only in undergraduate institutions, even before that. Because if you look at higher education, if you look at high school education in many other countries, fast-growing countries, research becomes number one for their students to learn the things that we learned in the classrooms many years back. So research teaches them to be better students. Research teaches them how to solve problems and how to look at problems in an entirely different way, as you heard from Thule and Katie and Dustin and other students here. This becomes a very critical point for us, and I do agree with you that the terminology it is time to go.
My second comment, and this is our issue, I think, internally, is Generally, I think that good policy, good higher education policy bubbles up to us and in the form of recommendations, student involvement, faculty involvement, the institution leaders, system vetting, and then we get recommendations and we discuss it. In this area, in trying to make what I guess I would call the conversion to a 21st century attitude about the roles of our institutions, especially with respect to this kind of research-based undergraduate education and opportunities. I think this has to be a top-down thing. And my view is that the Board of Regents has to make this a very top priority. And what I'm talking about in part is this. Katie and Thule go to Ohio State, unfortunately, for us. Maybe it's fortunate for them. But let's just take this scenario. They go to Ohio State, they do this, continue with their research, they get their PhDs, and they both are interviewing for jobs, and Katie takes a job with a, quote, research institution, and she's talking to her department chair, and the department chair says, well, Katie, we have to talk to you about your research role, and, oh, by the way, you have to teach too. Thule goes to a, quote, teaching institution, and her department chair says, well, we have to talk about your teaching load, and she says, and my research. And that department chair says, you're not here to do research. Well, as these professors who are supervising the students we've heard from today and yesterday, they don't stop doing the research. They get out of these graduate programs where they've been doing the cutting-edge research, they come to a job, and in a 21st century environment, they are still doing their research. And I'm afraid that it's going to take a long time working through the bureaucracy for that department chair in my example who says, you're not here to do research. Now, obviously, there are department chairs who are very supportive of these faculty members we've heard from. I think this needs to be a message from the Board of Regents to our system president, who sets goals and objectives for the leaders of our institutions, who then have to lead and set directions for our campuses. I don't know if you have any comments about that. I don't expect you to have one, but if you do, I'd like to hear it.
I think the chairpersons and the department chairpersons, the deans, they feel the pressure in allocating resources and time of the faculty for teaching as well as research. So I believe that any guidance that you can provide to the system and to the campuses in terms of how critical is research for our faculty and students and future of the state will be an important message that can go from this committee.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I assure you, Mark, I will bring your comments to the attention of my successor.
Thanks. I will share them also.
Good.
Thank you.
That's a very, Mark, a very interesting synthesis of, I think, what needs to be looked at in depth. It's well done. Thank you very much. I'm kind of anxious to finish if we can, because we have a bus ride of 7 hours back to Madison. But if anybody has a burning question, let's pursue it. David?
Just very quickly, you know, we struggle over funding for higher education in our message, and this is clearly a nonpartisan message that we need to do a better job of sending. This doesn't have politics attached to it. It's about the economy. It's about our future, and it's about us being a solution to that future and not the problem. And we just need to do a better job of sending that message, and I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Anybody else who had any Final comments? Thank you very much. That was a wonderful start for the READY committee that we had here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I'll take a motion to adjourn the READY committee meeting. Would somebody so move? Is there a second? Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? We return to our regular meeting then, and we turn to the reports of our committees, and we start with the Education Committee. And Judy, are you doing that, or is... Okay.
As you know, I am not chair of the Education Committee. Jose Vasquez is. He was not able to be here, but although he was with us by phone yesterday, with some frustration to him, I think, because at certain points when he wanted to weigh in, we couldn't hear him, but he could hear us. And at any rate, I was glad to have this opportunity. You have the written report of the Education Committee in front of you, and I believe it accurately conveys the meeting highlights, although I do want to especially mention the very high quality of our discussions and the two presentations that we heard. One on a new PhD program in public health at UW-Milwaukee, and you're likely to give more exposure to that at the June meeting, but it was excellent. And then Provost Hensrud gave us a wonderful presentation about UW Superior's high-impact practices in action. Now, it says on my sheet here that is provided for me, in the interest of implementing in good faith one of the key recommendations of the Bradley report, I will add nothing and move on to the consent agenda. The Education Committee unanimously approved the minutes of the February 9th, 2012 meeting, along with the following 5 resolutions, which I now move for adoption. Resolution 1182, approving the annual request to the William F. Vilas Trust Estate for support of scholarships, fellowships, professorships, and special programs in the arts, humanities, social sciences, and music. Resolution 11A3, authorizing the implementation of the BBA, BS, BA in interactive web management. Resolution 11A4, authorizing the implementation of the BFA in interior design at UW-Stout. Resolution 11A5, authorizing the implementation of the BFA in industrial design at UW-Stout. And Resolution 11B, authorizing the implementation of the PhD in public health at UW-Milwaukee. I so move, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second to Judy's motion? Jeff seconds. Does anyone want to remove any of those proposed adoptions from the list? All right. We will then go ahead. All those in favor of Judy's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Now, you really didn't think I was going to add nothing, did you?
I'm not going to comment on that.
I do want to say that I have been a member of the Education Committee for most of my tenure on the board, and how important that has been in my life as a regent. I have great respect for the leaders in our institutions in the academic areas. The provosts have been wonderful to interact with, and I want to also express great regard for UW academics, the system academic staff. I think we've had wonderful leadership and support, and that has meant a great deal to me too. And I finally want to say that to me, the work of the Education Committee, and as you go ahead in a restructured way and looking at things differently, I want to emphasize the importance of the work of that committee, because it really is where the Regents learn about, think about together, and work to bring about the very best possible quality education available to our students. I think much of what we heard this morning should be addressed in the Education Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. We turn to the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee.
joint meeting of Business, Finance, and Audit and Capital Planning Committee. Regent Bartel will address those items. We reconvened as the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, and we heard from UW-Stevens Point Chancellor Bernie Patterson and student body representatives from Stevens Point and Eau Claire, who spoke about the new differential tuition proposal for the institution of Stevens Point. Chancellor Patterson and the students told us about the importance of differential tuition to the SP campus community. They walked us through the potential components of the differential tuition, outlining resources that could be generated and the important needs that it could help to resolve. The students also discussed how they became engaged in the process, and a letter was read offering also an alternative viewpoint. The committee also approved a resolution delaying the scheduled 5-year review of a number of previously approved differential tuitions until February 2013. Trust Fund Senior Portfolio Analyst Tom Reinders presented highlights from the annual peer endowment benchmarking studies, and the committee approved voting of 2012 non-routine proxy proposals. The committee also approved the minutes of the February 9th, 2012 meeting, the UW-Madison contractual agreement with Pfizer, Inc., and the UW La Crosse Dining Services contract with Sodexo Operations. In the report of the Senior Vice President, Michael Morgan offered an update on the current status of the HRS implementation. Associate Vice President for Human Resources and Workforce Diversity, Al Christ, addressed the activity of the university personnel system and the potential items of focus for future reports. And Mr. Morgan gave an overview of the annual distribution adjustments for new GPR fee funding in the coming 2012-2013 fiscal year. In trying to keep it short, I find myself talking faster. On behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, I move the adoption of Resolution 12A2, approval of the extension of differential tuition reviews, Resolution 12B2, approval of the voting of 2012 non-routine proxy proposal, Resolution 12C2, approval of the UW-Madison contractual agreement with Pfizer, and Resolution 12C3, approval of the UW La Crosse Dining Services contractual agreement with Sodexo Operations.
Is there a second to Mike's motion? Okay. Does anyone want to remove any one of those 4 proposed resolution adoptions for further discussion? All right. If not, let's vote on Mike's motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Mike. Why don't you, yeah. Oh, that concludes your report. We'll come back to you on the task force separately, I guess. Yeah. All right, Jeff.
Thank you, President Spector. The committee met, as Regent Falbo said, with the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee to hear 2 presentations yesterday. The first concerned the physical transformation of the UW Superior campus. A wonderful presentation by Vice President of Administration Jan Hansen and her colleagues. We want to thank them for that. We got a good picture of what Superior has done and is doing currently to create a desirable campus. We also had a presentation by Associate Vice President David Miller on overview of items taken up by the Legislative Task Force on restructuring and operational flexibilities. He mentioned to us the management flexibilities that are requested in the areas of capital planning and procurement, and I think Regent Falbo will tell us more about that in the next report. We then discussed very briefly the recommendation of the Bradley report concerning agenda items that we might be able to delegate or abbreviate in some fashion to streamline our committee meetings. In particular, we discussed delegating decision-making on minor real estate transactions, such as accepting gifts of small pieces of property or granting easements on small parcels, and approving routine all-agency maintenance and repair projects, as to which there almost is never any issues. We observed that it took more of the committee's time to discuss this than it did the agenda items that we were discussing. So, but the committee is open to such efficiencies if it appears appropriate. We approved our minutes, and then we went on to 9 resolutions that were unanimously approved by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee. Those 9 resolutions you will find in the digital version of our report, and I don't think that I'll spend any time on those except for one of them, which I think the board ought to focus a bit on, and that is Resolution 1.3.J, which was brought by UW Platteville. And this resolution requests authority to develop a residence hall and dining facility in partnership with the University of Wisconsin-Platteville Real Estate Foundation, a foundation formed for the purpose of handling real estate for the campus. Under this proposal, which is somewhat different from anything that we've approved before, the campus will lease 2 acres of land, Regent-owned land, to the foundation, and the foundation will develop and construct a $28.7 million building on the land. And when construction is completed, the campus, Platteville, will have the option to purchase it back and intends to do so. And it will operate this facility as a residence hall and dining facility. The Regents discussed the terms of this agreement, and as a result of avoiding various obstacles and expenses and delays that are typical in the capital planning process that we see in almost all capital planning projects, it is anticipated that this project will cost about $7.5 million less than the cost of a traditional state-built facility. That's $7.5 million on a $28.7 million project. Of that, about $6 million will be in savings to the students who will be renting rooms at the residence hall and the dining room facility, and an additional $1.5 million will be go to the Real Estate Foundation, which will be shortly giving the campus a memorandum describing what they plan to do with it. But it is expected, according to Chancellor Shields, that it will be used for scholarships and other campus purposes to benefit students. This is a process, this structure, that I think benefits the UW system, it benefits UW Platteville, and it benefits the students. It is win-win-win as far as the committee was concerned. And we're hoping that the operational flexibilities that are currently being considered by the task force will include at least some efficiencies that will provide this kind of cost effectiveness to our capital planning process. I think that's all I'll talk about as far as that project is concerned, and I don't think that there is anything else that I'll mention regarding the committee's deliberations. We have 9 resolutions, and so I will now move resolutions 1.3 D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L. The Platteville resolution was J, I mentioned.
Before I ask for a second, just because you took that time, does anybody want to comment on what Jeff said about the Platteville thing? Is there anything else that Mark?
Just more of a question. So the project, if not done in this way, would be more like $35 million, and that reduction. I see David's hand up.
Thank you for asking the question, because I want to clarify that savings is not in just the soft cost of the project. We're building a different building than the state would build. So most of that savings is in the quality of the building. This is more like a commercial code building, not a state traditionally built building. For example, all the interior walls will be drywall instead of block. That alone is a huge savings. So I'm glad to get the opportunity to speak to that.
What other state requirements are we doing an end around on?
The 4% fee, when we do a lease like this, we're not paying the Department of Administration 4% of the construction cost. That's a big savings. Because it is a state building, we will be paying prevailing wage. So that's more sort of an added cost as if it were private, but similar to a state building. The other cost is in the architectural and engineering fee is significantly less than we believe the Real Estate Foundation negotiated a substantially lower fee than the state would have negotiated, probably with the same firm. So there's soft cost and there's hard cost. But the whole continuum of the project, particularly because of time, they'll break ground on this if approved next week at the Building Commission in June. We'll open next August. And it's 400 beds and a very large dining facility. And it will be done very well. The same construction firm is building a building right now that is previously approved that is on private land, owned by the Real Estate Foundation. We've toured it in mid-construction. We've taken Division of State Facilities staff to tour it, and it's a high-quality building, and it's perfectly appropriate for a residence hall.
Thank you.
That's a long answer, as per usual.
That's a good answer. Congratulations. Anybody else? Now, I would... oh, Mike.
You mentioned $1.5 million that was going to the foundation. Where's that coming from?
Part of the $28.7 million purchase price includes embedded in it $1.5 million that's being called a development fee to the foundation. That's coming out of the purchase price.
We're going to bond, basically borrow in the end.
Yes.
And we're borrowing $1.5 million to put into the foundation?
Yes. That's the request.
And I have...
One of the expenses is the $1.5 million.
Well, but it's not an expense of constructing the building.
Not the brick and mortar, but it's like any other development project that they'd have a development fee going to somebody.
It's bonded money. It's the same as
that's
the development fee that we pay to the DOA.
I know. We can offset one with the other, but the fact is, if we didn't have that, the building would cost $1.5 million less than we'd get the same building. And I'm not fighting it. I'm just, I feel like we're going to end up borrowing money to provide the foundation money.
All the soft costs in a project are generally the part of the total package cost that is bonded. So the AE fee is actually bonded. The DSF 4% fee is bonded.
Make a case that's directly related to the construction of the building. Maybe a weak case because of what we'll hear later, but a case nonetheless.
If you got any services for that fee.
Okay. I have concerns about what flags that might raise.
I understand.
Is there a second to Jeff's motion, which I interrupted? Jerry, you have your hand up before for that? Okay, seconded. Now, does anyone want to remove any of these proposed resolutions from the list of alphabetical ones that Jeff stated? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, David. And Jeff? Jeff, does that conclude? All right. Now I'm going to turn to Regent Falbo to provide an update on the Legislative Task Force on UW Restructuring and Operational Flexibilities, which met on Wednesday morning in Madison.
We had a very lively meeting. And we talked about capital issues and procurement issues and also institutional boards. So this is going to be, unfortunately, a little bit longer than committee reports, but okay, thank you. The task force heard presentations on the capital budget and planning process from Associate Vice President David Miller, Chris Schoenherr, Deputy Secretary of DOA, and Summer Shannon Bradley, Administrator for the DOA Division of State Facilities. The UW presentation included several proposals for improving the current process. Some of them you've heard here. If we do it this way, we can improve the process. Revising the process to allow the UW to use its expertise to manage the planning, design, and operation phases, while DOA would leverage its skills in the bidding, contracting, and construction phase. Under this approach, UW would handle the architect and engineering selection, while DOA would be retained as the state's construction authority. In addition, the enumeration process would be streamlined as well to allow projects in existing facilities to move faster. It would also empower the Board of Regents with the authority to enter into leases when we're talking about lease space. DOA expressed support for the current centralized process, stating that it provides consistency and efficiency and allows a comprehensive perspective on the entire process. It also provides synergies across all state projects. DOA believes that the current 4% administrative fee is money well spent, and that the existing centralized process has served the state well. The task force has expressed interest in understanding whether the 4% fee is appropriate, how it relates to charges in other states and the private sector, what services it covers, and how these funds are being used. The task force also discussed that the existing dollar thresholds are far too low to provide a meaningful distinction, as almost no gift-funded projects fall below $500,000. And the 500, as you all know, is a new high level. There was a lot of discussion. I think the overall feeling of this piece and the procurement piece was that we made very good, constructive presentations, and we got very little back from the DOA. And that was pretty much a constant feeling of the task force. We moved on to procurement, and Assistant Vice President Ruth Anderson and UW-Madison Purchasing Director Mike Hardiman and Chris Schoenherr, again, Deputy Secretary, and Helen McCain, Administrator of the DOA Division of Enterprise Services. Ruth gave us a very quick background, which I thought would be nice to share with you, that in 1858, tuition for a 13-week session was $4. Room rent was $8. If it was a winter term, it was another $8 for your supply of wood. And washing was 44 cents per dozen of what, I don't know. So we heard the presentation, the UW presentation covered several topics, including even if some levels of approvals are removed or eliminated, multiple checks and controls would remain, including review by the business community, required posting on the contract, sunshine, website, and auditing requirements. Even without UW purchases, state agencies procure over $50 million worth of goods and services each year and participate in many purchasing consortia. This reduces the impact of UW on any contracts. In addition, UW makes its contracts available for use by other public entities. The design of the current process creates many unintended delays which can have major impacts, especially on UW research projects. Therefore, the appropriate question is what value is added by each of the multiple layers of approval. UW recommendations for reforming the procurement process are vesting procurement authority with the Board of Regents, including decisions regarding the use of mandatory state contracts, allowing UW institutions to support their communities and local businesses, and continuing to assure accountability through reporting and auditing requirements, and the use of the contract transparency website. DOA's presentation focused on the following points. UW represents approximately 40 to 50% of the state's purchasing, and removing it would increase prices from vendors between 5 and 25%. This could increase prices for other state agencies and local governments that make purchases off state contracts. Excuse me. UW has already been granted authority over procurement of items that are unique to higher education, and that authority will begin on July 1st, 2013. DOA is interested in modernizing the procurement process and implementing efficiencies, providing that the process continues to provide accountability, transparency, and protection against litigation. The task force expressed interest in finding ways to allow UW institutions to find savings or better values in their local communities, or to allow UW to opt out of mandatory state contracts. The task force also stressed the importance for reforming the state waiver process. It currently takes UW an average of 21 days to receive a waiver. The task force discussed ways to leverage UW's e-procurement system and buying power to secure better prices, lower bids, which could be extended to all state agencies. Basically, Darrell Brazel said, we have the system in place that you don't have. We can provide the service to you. In addition, UW could be used as a pilot for other procurement changes or proposals. For both the procurement and capital budgeting, several members of the task force requested that DOA provide suggestions and recommendations for reforms that DOA would and could support. It was stated by one of our task force members, Chancellor Shields, in both cases after the presentations, that UW came in with very good, well thought out, workable solutions to some problems. And DOA basically came and said, we think everything's fine. And I don't think there was a person on the task force that accepted that. We then moved on to institutional boards, which was our first attempt at a draft of a position. And it wasn't really a full position, but it had some options in it. That kind of took on a life of its own. It was late in the meeting. We were running over. So we didn't get very far with it, and we're going to take it up at our next meeting. We're moving to all-day meetings for the rest of our meetings because we think we're falling behind a bit. So, but as part of that discussion of institutional governing and advisory boards, some of the ideas that were presented is more authority should be pushed out to the institutions. There should be institutional governing boards with actual, real authority. Statutory changes that provide greater authority to UW are needed before any governing board should be created. More authority can already be allocated to the institutions within the existing governance structure without the creation of additional boards. Many flexibilities have already been delegated to the institutions. And rather than focusing on governance structure, the important consideration should be securing additional flexibilities. So you can see the input was all over the board. So we're not far enough along for me to tell you that we have a direction on that topic yet, but we're hoping the next meeting will do that. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
In fact, we're not going to make this decision right now, but I'm a little concerned about the discussion on the advisory institutional boards. Because as you said, and I have heard from people who were there, it was all over the map. One of the questions I got, though, from one of the members was, we weren't clear what was the position of the chancellors and of the regents. They, in fact, said, gee, it sounded maybe like you like this more governing boards, not advisory. And I said, well, I thought we were had a consensus on that. Do you think that there is some need for us, we have to reestablish our position and the position of the chancellors on this? Because I think we're in a fairly much of agreement in this board, and the chancellors at least. So I'm a little concerned that...
Yeah, I think we felt that the institutional bodies, whatever we call them, boards,
right,
not correct, advisory is probably not correct, and so I don't know the proper term, but put that aside. Based on the presentations made by Chancellor Lovell and Chancellor Ward earlier on, was that the two research institutions should have these groups to advance some of their unique needs and goals. And it was optional. This is the way it started. It was optional whether any of the other institutions want or should or could have a board or a group. The chancellors, I guess I'd let they're here, the ones that are on the task force. So I guess I'd let them speak for themselves on what their position is.
Okay. It's not now?
No.
Testing.
There you go. Now we got it.
Yes, in fact, at the last chancellor's meeting with the president, we kind of summarized our position, which is basically the one you've heard, and we wanted to be careful not to suggest what the Regent's position was, but based upon your discussion, it sounded very similar to ours.
Correct.
And I had, in our meeting, because we just started discussing this, when I had my one chance to talk, by the way, I would like to amend Regent Falbo's report to say he also muzzled Chancellor Wells. I asked at one point...
That's difficult. I never haven't seen that
Could
done.
we have that as a friendly amendment? I asked to have an opportunity at some point in the conversation, which will happen next time, to put a 3-point summary out that we put together that really, I think, pretty clearly articulates what Mike was just sharing with you. But because of the way it was going and was a late time, I didn't get to read that into the record. So, but we're at the same place we were before.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments for Mike? Tim.
Point out that there were several members of the task force who did not and have not weighed in on this issue. And we're waiting for a more full discussion of the topic. So I think Regent Falbo is absolutely right that it's a little too early to catch the drift of the entire task force.
Okay.
Yeah, the comments I gave you about the governing boards in particular was just individual comments. There was no group or consensus whatsoever.
And you're taking it up again next time, you said.
That will be the first item on the agenda.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Now, Mike's going to continue with our next agenda item. And Troy, that is to say a formal goodbye to you and thank you very much for your service. But, Mike, why don't you do the resolution, or why don't you go up there?
I wanted to start and say thank you to Superior. And like President Spector, I had the honor and privilege of being their commencement speaker a couple of Decembers ago. This December thing's starting to have a pattern. Now, I know... Pardon?
Hockey team here for you?
No, it was very peaceful. I know, though, that Superior is disappointed because I know they were trying to get Governor Schwarzenegger to be their speaker at the time, and he couldn't make it. So when I got up there, I apologized that Arnold wasn't there and that you got his twin brother, Danny DeVito. We'll talk about Troy. Troy has brought a new and significant voice into our discussions. He may be the first member of the board to be enrolled in an online degree program during his service. I think that's true. As we all know, Troy has been active and engaged from day one. He has been especially good at keeping in contact with the UW system student representatives and working before each board meeting to understand any concerns that students might have about topics on the agenda. I know we've all appreciated Troy's comments and reflections, especially during the tuition and budget discussions. The first time I met with Troy, we met for a cup of coffee, I don't even remember where, I think at Conomowoc. And he was a little surprised when I walked in because it was my day to take care of, at that time, a 3-year-old granddaughter. And I was very nervous because I didn't know how much time she was going to give us to allow us to have any kind of meeting. But she gave us an hour, and we were both pretty impressed, so that it worked out well. I knew then that Troy was dedicated, inquisitive, and what I didn't know is what a great caregiver he would become after his wife had full knee replacement during his term as Regent. As much as we see, feel, and are part of the turbulent times that we're in, getting to know Troy gave me a feeling of comfort and confidence that our future's in good hands. We need your vision, your dedication, your persistence to make sure that the best is yet to come. With that, I will read the resolution of appreciation for Regent Troy Shervin. Whereas Troy Shervin has served as an insightful and dedicated student regent on the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents from July 2011 through April 2012, and whereas Troy drew upon his experiences as a returning adult student, having made the decision after 18 years in the workforce to earn a Bachelor of Science degree in management from UW-Stout through an online degree program. Now, I did verify that he completed, because it's not May yet, so yes, and he did. Whereas Troy articulated the unique need of the growing non-traditional student population in the UW system, emphasizing the need to assist non-traditional transfer students by including options such as credit for prior learning. And whereas through his service as a member of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, Troy showed his commitment to the UW system's tradition of sound stewardship and financial preparedness, whereas Troy has a first-hand perspective on the difficulties arising from the university's budget cuts and the resulting impact on tuition, being both a current UW student and the father of a current UW student, or soon to be, and has urged UW leaders to clearly communicate that increased tuition revenues offset only a portion of reduced state funding. And whereas Troy has served students through his engaged participation in student government as a Regent liaison to the UW student representatives, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System commends Troy Shervin for his exemplary service on behalf of the UW system and the citizens of Wisconsin, and wishes him every success in the future. Troy, thank you. This is yours. I'll leave it.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you.
Got a plaque here for you as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Regent Falbel. I have to be a little informal here. I just found out my 4-year-old son is at home watching on the computer trying to talk to me to say hi. So, hi, James. Daddy will be home soon. Back to business. First of all, I'd like to thank Governor Scott Walker for this incredible opportunity. This has been just an outstanding end to my educational experience. I can't think of a better way to top off a management degree. I'd also like to recognize my wife, Beth. Without her strong support, continuing my education and serving on the board would not have been an option. So thank you, Beth. Didn't think I'd be nervous up here. So. As a regent, we all know there's no manual that comes along with serving. I was appointed to the board 1 week prior to my first meeting, and I just remember feeling very overwhelmed. All you can probably relate to that. My first meeting was the tuition increase meeting, and I had a lot of groundwork to catch up on before my first meeting. It was at that point that I realized how valuable Jane Rideau is to this organization. So Jane, thanks for answering my endless questions and just helping me along. I'd also like to again thank Regent Falbel for taking his time to mentor me, help me along, and he's just a tremendous asset to this board, so thank you, Mike. When I was appointed, I was full of ideas of what I wanted to accomplish. It's very easy for an outsider looking in to have all the answers. I quickly realized that those answers are not quite as easy as they seem. We all know that there's many challenges and difficult decisions that lie ahead. But I have to say I'm truly encouraged about the future of this system when I think of the men and women that are leading it. I want to say thank you to everyone I've worked with on this board and in the UW system. I've learned so much from all of you, and it has truly been my pleasure serving with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Now it's time to express appreciation to our hosts, to Chancellor Wachter and to her team that has done so much to make our visit a memorable one, and Regent Tyler is going to deal with that.
If you don't mind, I'd like to turn this a little bit. One of the most fun things about being a regent is having the opportunity to not look at text on a page. When we look at buildings, oftentimes it's text on a page. But when we come and experience what buildings are helping accomplish, when we see what programs are helping accomplish, when we see students growing wings, that's really what's fun about being a regent. I hope I speak for all in that. Certainly that's what's fun for me. So our resolution for appreciation is, whereas the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents is delighted to have met at the UW Superior with the UW Superior students, faculty, staff that is dedicated to the liberal arts mission, and to have learned more about high-impact practices that are better preparing UW students, UW Superior students for a lifetime of learning. And whereas the board is inspired by UW Superior's partnerships in progress with the local community and region designed to provide mutual benefits that connect the public to UW Superior and the UW system. And whereas the board appreciates the substantial positive impact that UW Superior research centers and institutes have on the community, region, state, and environment, along with the exceptional educational opportunities they provide to undergraduate students. And whereas the board has been impressed to see the firsthand the physical transformation of the campus and the resulting energy and excitement this has brought to the UW Superior campus and surrounding community. And whereas the board appreciated the opportunity to participate in the inauguration of Chancellor Renee Wachter, along with students, faculty, and staff. And whereas the board has been pleased to learn about the new Northward Project, short for Northwest Wisconsin Educators for Regional Development, which aims to connect regional higher education institutions to each other in the region they serve. It is therefore resolved that the UW Board of Regents hereby congratulates the University of Wisconsin Superior on its leadership in academics, community connections, and state-of-the-art learning facilities, and expresses its gratitude to the entire campus community for the hospitality during our April 2012 meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Before we break for lunch, are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Mr. Smith.
Although I know we're going to do something a little more formal next month, I thought I wouldn't want to let this meeting go by without recognizing two other regents who are having their last meeting today. I'll do this very briefly because we're going to do more in June, but Regent Crane and Regent Spector. All of us around this table know what a commitment, time commitment, energy commitment it is to be on this board. And these two exemplify that tenfold, and they've both had leadership positions that you've heard about, you've seen Mike, and they have been tremendous assets to this board. And as I said, I know we're going to do something more in June, but this is the last time they're going to be around this table, and I didn't want to have this meeting go by without recognizing Judy and Mike.
It's very nice of you, but save some of it for June. Thank you, Brent, very much. Box lunches are available, I'm told, in room 230, the staff office to the left of the stairs. And I ask that, it says Regents and Chancellors, please do not forget to pick up your special package, wherever that is, before you leave campus today. It is marked in room 230 with your name on it.